Everybody, welcome back to Final Residence TV in episode number 25
25.
of Van Halen stories. Today with Carl Ja from Dread
Yeah.
Zeppelin. You know?
Yeah.
Carl is now on the East Coast, but grew up on the West Coast. Which town did you grow up in over there? And
I grew up in Arcadia, California, which is just south of Pasadena. It's about 6 miles away. It's like Pasadena, Sierra Madre, and Arcadia is below it.
okay.
Yeah. I grew up in Boston when I was 9.
Okay, so Michael Anthony's from Arcadia as well, I believe.
Yes. Matter of fact, he went to Arcadia High School.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are we starting right now? Are we into it?
Yeah, we're into it.
All right. Before we start,
Okay.
as a tribute to Ed Van Halen's guitar tone, we're going to variact this whole thing. All right. We're going to put this on 90 volts.
There you go.
Just so we run smooth. We don't clip anything. If we need to gas it, a little more grease, we can do it. If it's too hot, bring it down.
We need a variant.
Prop interview guy.
You got to.
Well, the thing about Arcadia High School was Mike Anthony went there. Stevie Nicks went there earlier. So there's a lot of rock and roll lineage. But Arcadia High School was 10th, 11th, and 12th. The junior high was 7th, 8th, and 9th. So your sophomore year, you're not really in high school. You're still in junior high.
Okay.
So senior when I was a sophomore. So I never was in school with him at the same time. But I had friends that were sophomores when I was a freshman that were at high school. And anytime a band came, they would get me a ticket. Right. And it was a day. What happens is there's the football game, 4 quarters. The 5th quarter would be the dance. And they'd always have a band for home games. Mm-hmm. So I got in as a 9th grader and saw one of Mike's early bands that nobody talks about. You hear about Snake, mm-hmm. but have you ever heard of Balls?
No.
Balls. Balls.
Wow.
They played at the dance. Mike was on bass singing.
Okay.
A guy named Rick Boyer played drums, and the guitar player's name was Warner Schuchner, who later became the guitarist for the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm and Blues Band. And they were known, kind of popular band, like a Charlie Musselwhite or a blues band. Who's the other guy? So they played. I remember them playing "Politician" by Cream with that kind of a weird riff. It kind of stuck in my head. So that was when I was in 9th grade, and then Then I don't think that band lasted long. But then when I was a junior in 1974, that was the first time I saw Van Halen. Okay. And again, 5th quarter. They played in the same place in the boys' gym. They had a little banner hanging up on the wall, like a half a bed sheet. It had that old Van Halen logo. Sometimes you see it on the shirts. And they had the keyboard player, and Mike Stone was playing bass. So there was still a 5-piece. This is 74. And then shortly after that, I went to a party in Upper Arcadia, and Mike was in the band, and the keyboard player was out. And then they were the Van Halen that everybody knows and loves. But yeah, so the first time, and they were doing I remember Ed I think he had a Les Paul Custom. He was just kind of standing there, not really looking at the crowd, kind of shoegazing, stacked behind him, stacked on top of each other. They played like Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, Free Ride, Slow Ride, all your ride songs, Slow Ride, Rock and Roll by Kiss, some Zeppelin, Rock and Roll by Zeppelin. And they were great. Yeah. So, there's like 100 kids there, maybe. Arcadia High was a big school. There was a lot of. That's why I think they had 9th grade and junior high, because there was so many kids.
So when you were at these shows, with them, what was your initial impression of each member?
Well, I was just learning how to play guitar. I got my guitar when I was in 8th grade, and so seeing a guy like Ed was amazing. And we were kind of in little bands here and there, What do I think about? Well, the focus was, the focus, I guess, was on Dave, because Ed wasn't so exuberant yet. He wasn't jumping in the air and all that stuff. So Dave was, he was cocking the walk, and he was doing all the frontman stuff. Not as crazy as they progressively learned the biz and performing and stuff as they went on. Then by the time they get to Gazzarri's and stuff, they were pretty much formed. That's how they were from then on.
Right.
But and here's a funny thing about. Nobody's ever talked about this, and I think it might have happened just a stagecraft thing they did.
Okay.
Backyard party or club. Alice would start doing a drum solo, And Dave would take a plastic tube, like maybe, I don't know, like 4 or 5 feet long, and he would put it in the sound hole of the second aerial tom here. And he would do that. He would do that rock back thing, like on the back cover of VH1.
Yeah.
And he'd tube in his mouth, and he'd blow into it. So it was like a boom, like a timpani, like a rototom. You know, when you tighten.
Yeah.
I saw him do it like twice, and they never did it again. So maybe somebody that's dumb or don't, in the way of my solo. I don't know what happened, but it was part of this stage thing. I thought it was clever, but it was, so he was raising and lowering the pitch of the tom by blowing air into the drum.
Right.
I've heard anybody talk about that. And
as Alex is playing.
Yes. It was his feature drum solo, and Dave was kind of part of it. And cool. Then he, how drummers used to do a drum solo, then they'd throw the sticks and do it with their hands.
Yeah, sure.
Then they'd throw their hands out, and then they did. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so that whole thing. So it was kind of that thing, like a stagecraft thing.
Sure.
But interesting. But yeah, we saw him play at a lot of backyard. I've seen him play a lot of clubs.
Hey, so I got a question. Here's something I want you to confirm from Tad's interview, from Kurt James's interview. Okay, so I asked a few people this about Kurt's thing, but he said that they pulled the bomb across the stage during Eddie Van Halen solo. The bomb would be pulled over, and then he would tweak it at the end of the solo. Did you ever see that?
I have never heard that story. I wouldn't doubt it, but all I'm talking about is pre-bomb, and Ed had actual Maestro Echoplexes on his amps.
Okay,
and so before he got the bomb with the Univox cassette deck, he that's funny. I did hear them say that. I'm like, wow. So they were punking him. They were pulling the thing like.
Maybe it was a one-off, but maybe it was just something they were trying out, like to bring it to him, kind of to bring it to him while he was soloing as a prop. Like
summoning. I'm summing.
Right.
Summoning, the
big ending, for the big whammy bar ending or something. I don't
know. To talk about the first Van Halen album, as far as guitar playing goes.
Yeah.
Talk about getting the feedback, awesome feedback, like order harmonic feedback right when you need it. Several times on that. It's just, he must have been playing loud, because I tell people, Ed doesn't play with it. He doesn't have a ton of gain on his sound to me. It's more of a clean sound.
Right.
That was another story too. Well, God, I'm jumping all over the place now.
Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So that was interesting about the with the tube thing, but it was short lived, and they never did it again. Never did it like Gazzari's. It was a backyard party. I saw that they play that.
You're 70. You said you started out with them in 74, and these guys are. How old would they be then in 74? Ed was 2 years older than me. So Mike's 3 years older than me. So yeah, I graduated in 75. Yeah.
And
so still teenagers.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was 17, maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
So Ed's probably 20, 19.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, he was 23 in 78. So when the album came out, they apparently lied about that. He said he was 21.
Oh, right. Make a difference, He's even more awesome because he's younger.
Right, he's 21. He's badass.
The big thing was, you can't be married. You got to be eligible. Now it's just like, no, you're a virtuoso. That's right. Funny. Yeah.
Right. That's great. So tell me more about the your interactions with them during those days and those parties, and eventually to the Civic is what we were kind of talking about before, that you ended up playing with them at the Civic. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, not the Civic. We played with them at the International Casino Club. That flyer you have.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm at the Civic now. You know what? I saw a post the other day that said that Van Halen played at the Civic 14 times.
Yeah, it was something like that. That's not true, though, right?
For like 3. All I remember about the Civic shows was going in, and when they came out, Roth had these striped pants on.
Right.
They were like the red and white, and I was like, wow, because like that to me was like, wow, that's so professional. They're not wearing jeans, and they like somebody made those for him or something. It was pretty crazy. But the band sounded great. But okay, now that brings me to another guy. There's a name that hasn't been mentioned yet. Have you heard the name Alan Hornato?
No.
Hornato has an X in the end of it, like Swedish name.
No.
He did the PA at those gigs. Alan Hornato had a company called Encore Audio, and he would old school PA guy, truck, big cabs, monitors. He'd do clubs, parks, battle of the bands, the Civic, things like that. He would bring it all in, set it up. It took him all day. And then at the end, he'd load it all himself with maybe a partner. He had a partner, a guy named Jeff Burkhart. Now, those two names are very important to my lineage to Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, have you heard of a place called the Marquee West?
That sounds a little familiar.
But the Wood Sound, but there was another club in Arcadia right before the Wood Sound called the Marquee West.
Okay.
The Marquee West was a club started by a guy named Joe Ramsey, who, well, let me show you. Here's the first Led Zeppelin record.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Here's me.
Yeah.
Can you see Flossie?
Yep.
This is Joe Ramsey.
Okay.
Okay. And another very important guy and a guitar player that really should be talked about here, who saw Van Halen, I think, when they were Genesis, is Gary Putman. Okay. Gary Putman still plays, great guitar player. And these guys formed a band called the Prime Movers. But anyway, Joe in particular was kind of a provocateur of rock and roll. He played, he wrote songs, but he was the kind of guy that would go, like, he went into a club in Pasadena, sandwich shop, closes at 3:00 every day, and he sees like a little guitar in the corner, and he says to the owner, "What's going on here?" And he goes, my daughter's boyfriend comes in and plays the country stuff once in a while." And Joe goes, "Well, do you ever think of having bands here at night?" "No." "Well, I can book the bands." Pookies turn into Pookies. Motley Crue did their second, third show there. Rat played there with Jake Lee in the band, and we saw all these. This is early '80s, and Perkins Palace is right across the street. They had everybody played there. The Jam, Springsteen. I saw Ian Hunter play there. Plasmatics. I mean, anybody you can think of. So Joe started this club, and then, he started this Marquee West thing. So it was an old market, like a Kroger or stuff like that, a little small, like a Trader Joe's kind of size place. Mm-hmm. Put a stage in, and Sister played there. That was Chris Holmes's band before Wasp and all that. And one time Ed and Dave showed up, and they came just to come to the place. And Joe tried to get them to play there, but they were already kind of gone. So anyway, so at the Marquee West, Alan would sometimes put an installation PA in a place and leave it there. You know, he has to try. So we're sitting there one day, and he comes in and he goes, "Want to hear the new Van Halen album? Or you want to hear the Van Halen album?" And we're like, "It's not out yet. It hadn't come. It was not going to come out for another 2-3 months." We're like, "Hell yeah, we want to hear it." He goes, "Ed gave me a tape, gave me a cassette." So we're like, okay. So we sit back. He puts it to the PA, and it just, the horns, then the bass comes in. And I listened to it. My first impression was like the guitar is a lot fuzzier than I remember it being live. Live, it was more stringy and twangy. Mm-hmm. And this was just like, more sludgy, and it sounded great, like Run with the Devil. And even the first chords of You Really Got Me, I thought they had more girth to them, And so anyway, he played the tape. We all loved it and everything. And I guess the band found out that Ed gave him a tape, and they were pissed. They're like, "What are you fucking doing?" So they made him get back. But because Alan was there, did stuff for them all the time.
Right.
And so I thought that was he had to give the tape back because it was he was but Alan wasn't going to bootleg it. He wouldn't let anybody. He was totally straight arrow,
So Tom Broderick was involved in their sound too, in I think the later '70s, right? So
probably, yeah.
So they would rent pretty much from Alan, though.
Well, Alan would just do like the Civic. The Civic hired him, and Van Halen just happened to be playing.
Okay.
Did those shows no matter who was playing. And Kurt James mentioned seeing Van Halen. He said a band called Smokehouse opened.
Yeah. And
do you know anything about Smokehouse?
Yeah. Is that Carl Sandoval, right?
Carl Sandoval was a guitar player. Yeah. Larry Bucker singer, and Carl Sandoval was kind of like a boogie rock, ZZ Top kind of band. Yeah. That's the only time I saw Carl play live in a band. I know Carl real well too.
Okay. You were talking about, how well did you know those guys?
I knew, not good enough to like go to the rehearsal place or whatever. But if I saw Ed, what's funny, probably better than I thought, because the last story here was kind of very interesting to me. What happened as far as him warming up to me, kind of. I think he knew who I was. Sometimes I'd be in a band called the Cyclones after that band.
Right. We talked about that international. You played with them.
Well, fabulous Cyclones. And we changed the name of the Cyclones, and we scaled the band down, the band back up. But we had a really good singer, and I think a lot of people liked him and wanted to steal him. But they were there, and I remember Ed and Alex standing and watching us play, and they had that look on their face like, these guys suck, because we were more stuck, you know. Ed was very competitive. I remember one time I was at Poobah's Records, which is a record store in Pasadena. It's still there, but they've moved several times. But the original look downstairs, next to it, there was like a porno theater on Fair Oaks Avenue. There was a porno theater, and downstairs was Poobah's, and upstairs was like some Alcoholics Anonymous meeting place. Okay. And I went down one time, and he was the only two people in the store were me and him. And I didn't really know him, but I knew who he was. And I said, have you ever heard this album? And I held up Force It by UFO with Michael Schenker, which I think is a brilliant album. The guitar solos, I mean, they're not like Van Halen, but he's right. He's great. Michael Schenker's great. Anyway, he's like, his thing was kind of like, everybody, and I'm like, okay, we know you're fucking great, but come on, there's other good guitar players that, and he wasn't putting it down, but he was just being honest, I mean, I know he liked Jeff Beck, and I know he liked Holdsworth and a lot of people and Clapton and all that, but he didn't play like them. He had his own thing. And
let me ask you this though: if you're saying he was competitive, now this keeps going back and forth between all my guests that were there. Randy Rhoads people, the people in Randy's camp, say they were competitive, or that Randy might have been felt like they were competitive. A lot of the people in the Van Halen camp don't say that that's the case. What do you say?
I don't think they were either. I've only seen Randy Rhoads play one time. I didn't know Randy. Actually, the singer I was just talking about knew him really well, and his brother Kelly. But he, I saw him at the Wood Sound one time, and man, that Riggy that Tad talked about, the Ampeg hit, louder than shit. It was really loud. The Wood Sound wasn't a big place,
right?
But they were on that bill together. I mean, I guess Randy, he was kind of off my radar because Glendale was kind of a whole, like Greg Leon's whole thing. That was kind of, I didn't know really about them until later. Like when Greg started playing the Wood Sound and stuff, then I knew about him. And I think Greg Leon Division played at Pookie's too. Okay. With another band. Has anybody mentioned Smile?
Yeah.
Yeah. Smile. Tommy Gervin. Do you know who Tommy Gervin is?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, sure.
And all that. Mm-hmm. He was that band was, we thought they were going to be the ones that make it. Somebody's going to get signed. Van Halen, Smile. They were more Stonesy, Rod Stewarty, little glammy, little Bowie in the early stages. But Van Halen, they couldn't be denied. They were great. But Tommy's still on Facebook and stuff. He's a great guy.
I was going to tell you, when I was there a few months ago, let me grab this repair.
In at the Saga Hotel.
Yeah, I did.
What's funny about the whole about the PCC thing is that's where I met the guys in Dred Zeppelin. We met there. What's that say?
Poobah.
What does it say?
Poobah.
What?
Poobah Records.
Oh, Poobah. You went to Poobah's. They're right at the car center now, but they used to be in a house. But before that, they were, I was talking near the porno theater. Yeah, Poobah's Records. What did you buy?
Question is, what did I buy? I bought this. Big generator, yes.
Oh, yeah. The follow-up to 90125 or whatever. Yeah, that's a great record.
And let me see what else I got. I have the...
is that vinyl? Did you buy? Is it new?
That is not new. No, it's an old.
It's an old one from the
80s. And I got this, which is really strange, but this is the band GTR. Remember that band?
Steve Howe and Steve Hackett. No, GTR.
So
I pictured it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of that hit song, "When the Heart Rules the Mind" or whatever. What is a minor hit?
Well, are you into vinyl?
Yeah, man.
Well, I had that. Part of my day gig. What I do is I have a vinyl record shop up in Dahlonega, Georgia.
I saw that. Yeah.
I just put this in.
Yeah, what you got?
Right. With.
Oh yeah, the poster.
Yeah. The poster.
Yes,
this poster was hung in a certain kind of bar.
I know.
Hollywood.
Right. The old, this was the one. Yeah.
Finding this album in good condition with the poster is getting harder.
Right. That's a Helmut Newton photo.
I put this NPH1 in there the other day. I bought a collection of the guy, but yeah.
The Helmut Newton photo is famous in Greg. I don't know whether Greg wrote that in his book. I can't remember, but he did write an article on that shoot and how that was a big issue. And he ended up having a reshoot for that album. That's why you have the photos on the back that are different. The photo from the back from a different session from Norman Seeff. but the inside photo was from Helmut Newton.
Let's talk about the guitar tone on this record.
All right, I played that guitar.
The tone of this record is hard to play with. It's like Jimmy Page on the song means the same. It's distorted, but there's no sustain. I don't know how he got through it. I mean, it sounds like his amp is broken, but it makes me love it even more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the best tone he ever got, to me, the Van Halen tone is Van Halen 2, to me.
Yeah, right.
But Fair Warning's a little too warm. Then you got into the harmonizer thing, not into that.
Yeah.
But this album, like you listen to the beginning of like Fools, it's like there's a lot of reverb, but it's like he's got to fight to get through that. It's a hard sound to play with, and it's just a testament to how he attacks the strings, and it's amazing. Yeah, he hits those power chords, and it's just like they just die out quick. It's interesting.
Well,
makes me like
that. Most of that they said that he was trying to get his Destroyer tone back through Chris Holmes's Destroyer, where he borrowed that for that album.
Right.
And it was interesting to play that guitar, the Holmes Destroyer, because
he sounded good, man.
Thanks. Well, it was interesting because this one little time I spent on the guitar, I wanted to kind of get a feel for this guitar because I had never really played a vintage Destroyer, that neck profile. It's a little different than an Explorer. It's a little thinner.
Ibanez, yeah,
a little thinner neck, and but it did feel really comfortable to play. I mean, a short scale neck.
What did he have on it? 9s, 10s?
I think they were 9s. It seemed like it. And
why are you working so 9s on the guitar?
Huh?
Yeah. Why are you working so hard? Put the 9s on.
Right. That's what Eddie would. That's what his thing was too. And Billy Gibbons. But yeah, I felt like it did have a thing. That guitar did have a thing, and I could see where he would have gotten used to it back in the day and wanted to kind of. You really got me. That was the sound. It was that guitar, the sharp.
Well, somebody said that the any non-whammy bar stuff on the first album was that guitar, and the whammy bar stuff was the Strat.
That's what's usually been said. Yeah.
Maybe the sound I'm hearing was more sludgy and heavy because did it have a DiMarzio Super Distortion? I don't think of Ed using high gain pickups, but if you need a little more gain, not like a tube screamer, but just a little more with your amp dime, why not put a hotter pickup in it?
That's what remember that was a thing back then. You were there. You know how it was. We were fighting to get the little more gain all the time. It was like people don't realize that about that time. It was like everybody. There
was one replacement pickup.
Right.
The DiMarzio Super Distortion. Then he came out with the PAF and the Super 2, but Duncan wasn't around. You couldn't buy a Gibson or Fender pickup. They wouldn't sell them to you.
Right.
They wouldn't sell. You couldn't buy a Fender neck. That's why Charvel and these people started coming out. But unless you were a dealer and you had to send a broken one in because a guy had a customer, all that. Mm-hmm. But but I wonder if he is there photos of that pick? The Allen screws in it. Is there any photos of that guitar? The Ibanez pickups, the V2 looked like a DiMarzio.
Yeah.
It had the
they had different. He had different things in that thing. Of course, it was a Super 80 or Super 70s were in the original pickups, Super 70s, and then people think it was a Super Distortion. A lot of people think that it looks like one in the picture, right?
Why not? I mean, yeah.
And so, it apparently, Pete Thorne did a video on this comparing all that, and the Super Distortion did sound a lot like it.
I know.
It was pretty close. So yeah, there was all kinds of lore around it, and but yeah. So when I was there, one of my things was I was trying to go to find the sound chamber where that actually was. So Tad helped me find it.
Okay. Now here's the deal, though. The sound chamber was in that front thing, right? But one time, Dred Zeppelin did a Christmas song for an IRS Christmas compilation, and we went around the corner, and the entrance was there. It wasn't on the main street. It was on that alleyway going near the Playhouse there. So you walked in, and there was a door right there, and we walked in there, and that's where all the stuff was. So I don't know if it moved. And I think this was after the sound chamber closed, but some guy took over that studio. The guy who did with David Bearwald or whatever, they did the Tuesday Night Music Club with Sheryl Crow and all that.
Yeah.
Kevin Gilbert. All that whole thing,
yeah. So the entrance was on the side on the side by the Playhouse.
Yes. there's like a driveway you could drive through to park behind.
Yeah, it's,
and it's
right, you can still kind of get up the alleyway there.
Or, I mean, if you had to bring in a Hammond B3, you'd probably be hard pressed to do it. You know, it was kind of a regular door, but well, an outside door. You know, but yeah, nice studio in there. You know, we just needed to book time, and our Lee Manning, who does all our production stuff, worked with Dave Stewart. No, anyway, but he just booked. We just needed it for a night. We went in there and just banged it out. We did All I Want for Christmas is My Two Front Teeth, and in our Zeppelin reggae thing, and it went on a compilation for IRS. But
so let me ask you about this, because the it looks like the middle, there's 3 spaces there now. You know, the 3 front doors. The middle one is the one that matches the picture to the studio.
I went to the sound chamber one time, and I think it was the middle one. I don't think they had both sides. I'm not. I walked in, and there was just a row of guitars hanging, like miscellaneous, not a lot of stuff. It wasn't like going into like Black Market back in the 90s with just shit everywhere. You know, it was like just very clean row of guitars, and it closed shortly after that. So I might have missed the heyday of Sound Chamber.
Yeah, what I was going to say is the studio itself. Now, when it was taken over as a studio, the image I have of the studio that I found online, it looks to be the center section of those 3 buildings that they did that studio.
Okay.
And did they do the console all in that front room, and it was just an open room, or was there booths?
Well, when we went in there, everything was in that back part, so they must have moved it, because it wasn't like we walked in from El Molino Street or whatever it is, and it's there. It was in back, and then it was very cozy. Okay. Like we had to put it over here, and there's a guy. So I think somebody might have taken it over. I think they still called it the Sound Chamber. I'd have to look, but
yeah, it's interesting.
It was more. I saw the photo in your thing. It wasn't that.
Okay,
but it was that door in the alley going behind it.
So they reconfigured those buildings a little bit.
So this was 91. Yeah, that we did.
Yeah,
yeah.
So same spot, just different.
Yeah, different configuration. So
the other thing that I ran into, you would know because you have the dang Variac sitting there, is that Dow Radio is now the Sammy's camera on Colorado Boulevard.
You know, Dow Radio, you could buy Fender grill cloth there. They had grill cloth by the roll, and they had. Now, here's my question: did he get the bomb at C&H Surplus? There was a place called C&H Surplus that had oscilloscopes and test gear, and they had Variacs, and they had all kinds of just buckets of just knobs, any kind of knob you'd want. Purple Heart boxes, stacks of them. You want to put a cassette in a Purple Heart box for a promotional thing? They had them. It was, and then it was just an Armory Surplus, but not one of the ones that has closed. It was no closed. It was all just tubes. Do you want to buy a tube tester? They got it, and then they went out of business because But I wonder if he got. Do we know where he got the bomb from? Because bomb was later.
I don't know, and one of the things I think though you're right. You're probably right though, because you're going to be looking for that place where he got all this hardware for all the things that he would cobble together, over the years of different things he would put together with the whole thing with the shark, with the turnbuckles, and which hardware store he was just going around randomly grabbing stuff.
Well, Gary, my friend Gary, to this day does the eye hook with the dog thing because it's just a better idea. It
is a good idea.
Well, think about it. Eddie Van Halen changed the way guitars are made.
Sure,
you couldn't buy a one pickup, one hum, or one knob, one humbucker guitar. They didn't. I mean, a Junior has a one pickup and a volume tone, but just the way that looks and just the simplicity of it, and better idea.
It was.
I mean, because of that. I mean, and then the Floyd thing and all that.
Yeah, we were talking about this in Tracy's interview, how they going back to the Surplus thing, how that they wore those jumpsuits to load in, which something we see later in their career. Daddy's wearing jumpsuits on stage, but apparently this is something that goes back to the early days.
I don't remember that. Like I said, that suspicious performance thing when they look out of the sky, it's Van Halen, and then they came out and took it off, but I don't remember seeing them in a jumpsuit. He wore overalls one tour.
Well, he was saying, Tracy was saying that it was during their load-in that they wore these. And it had the Van Halen logo. So I don't know whether they're trying to be like, we're the roadies and then, or what, I don't know. But
related to that, but an interesting story was I saw Jethro Tull once, and there was like 15 people on stage getting the gear ready. The lights are up and they're all in jumpsuits.
Yeah.
And you don't notice it, but one by one, people are leaving. And at the very end, there's 5 guys. They take off the jumpsuit and they're up there. So they were up there the whole time. And then they start playing. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, there's like these little tidbits in the history of what you guys saw that kind of like you were talking about stagecraft and how things kind of build over time, and how your little bitty ideas just end up being this big picture at the end. It's like making a painting. You're slowly throwing little things in.
Well, it's kind of like when I wish I had it here to read. When Ed passed away, I wrote a small thing on my Facebook post, and then later on I wrote some guitar notes on the late great Ed Van Halen, and I wrote about how the whammy bar and the tapping stuff happened way at the end of his timeline, like right before they made it, that he discovered these techniques. Because before that, it was just that throwing the rhythm in with the leads, that kind of classic. That's the shit, Van Halen, just hard to play, very original style, and then later, way later, he kind of just did like the horse and the whammy. He kind of had like his stock licks you'd hear all the time. Ding, 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 ding. But back then it was really improvisational, the stretches, Gibson, more Gibson type guitars. And then he got the whammy bar and that was cool too. But I just like that early, just Les Paul into a Marshall or whatever it was.
It's just funny because all of you guys that were there, Tracy, yourself, and a bunch of others.
Oh, that too?
They all say that. George Lynch says that.
Yeah, because his timing was so good, and his phrasing was so good, and he never just, if he hung over, he come right back on the beat a little, like just for the next. I mean, he had really good meter in his head.
Right.
Great.
Right. And all the people that were there prior to their fame say the same thing. We wish we could go back and see that Edward Van Halen again. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember, well, when we did that international casino gig with them.
Yeah. Let me show that flyer. Now let's tell the story of the flyer. This is an actual flyer from the 70s.
I had two of those. I have some small ones, but I had two big ones. And I was friends with Doug, and I used to go up and see his thing. And he goes, "I got this Van Halen museum." I go, "Well, I got a poster you should have. It's not up here." So I gave it to him.
Yeah.
And he just gave it away. Come on.
Well, he kept one. He kept one.
But $10 for it. $10 right now. I got
no.
But yeah, he probably. But that's an original. If that's the one I gave him, it's totally original. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
There was some company called Tape Trader or something, and they were up there, and I think they sold tickets to this thing. But this guy Moon Cookie, it was somebody. The International Casino Club was in Duarte, and it was a bowling alley that went out of business. And the funny thing is, I think it was called Carolina Lanes or Columbia Bowl. I'm not really sure, but they had a lounge in there, a bar, and I took guitar lessons in 8th grade from a guy in Grand Music in Temple City. Just a few lessons to learn how to, and then I learned by ear pretty much and watching people. Mm-hmm. But his Denver, and he goes, "Yeah, you should come see my band." So my dad took me to that place, and we went in the bar, and Denver was playing. They put 145 out on Accent Records, and he. So I'd been in that bar, and then they tore all the lanes out. The band set up in where the pins would be, and then they had a bar in the back. It was like a bowling alley without the lanes, and a small stage. So we show up there. So the next people, so Cyclones played there. Mm-hmm. And I have a photo of me playing, and you could see Ed's gear. And here's the things I remember about that show. Guitar cables came out. There was a guitar cable that came out that was bright blue. And they had these ends that were brass. And they had a plastic ring, and it said like P, like a military plug, like like an operator would use, but 1/4 inch.
Okay. And
Ed must have once said, like, "I need 10 of those." So all the cables of all his gear were just blue everywhere. Like, I'm like, wow. Echoplex on the top. And he was playing a 335. I saw him at Kazar's place. So he had a little whammy bar on it. We weren't to the Strat yet, but he could kind of surf out a little bit. And so I had a 335. So at sound check, he's like, "Let me see your guitar." I said, "Okay." So we sat down, and he gave me his guitar, and mine was a walnut. So this is 77. And he's got, mine was a 72. So the neck was thinner. And so I picked his up, and the neck was huge on it, and it was shaved, and it was just like butter. And I remember I bent a string kind of high. He goes, "Whoa, whoa." Like, I just put those strings on. Like I said, I felt like, "You're worried about me breaking the string? You're going to grind this thing later on." But he was like, "No, it's in tune and everything." So he played mine, and I played, we shared a little bit. And then they went to sound check. And I remember sound check, they were trying to learn off the new Led Zeppelin Presence album, "Nobody's Fault." So he had the flanger going, and they were doing the da 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 da, and they kept kind of fucking it up. And he's like, God damn it, no, it goes 2 times, and they were working it out. I don't think they played it that night, but this was before originals. They weren't doing the originals yet,
right?
And so we had the 335. Sounded the same. It sounded great, but I guess the band didn't like it because it looked too much like a jazz guitar or something. And
but he loved the 335. He talked about that and then recorded with it,
great.
Of course. And then his sons, of course, recorded with it as well.
Sunburst,
yeah. They love that guitar, and in fact, I think Wolfie's new guitar that he has coming out is a very kind of a spin, on it.
It's like a hollow, isn't it? Like a white. I saw him playing. Yeah, that's cool.
It's a spin on it because I think that they both love that guitar, and it kind of has spun its way into the EVH lineage in a way.
Yeah, he played that for a while. I remember when he got the Flying V, the first Ibanez that came out.
Oh yeah, the black one.
And it got nicked. It got stolen out at I think the casino at the Golden West Ballroom. I think somebody took it. What happened? He didn't have that long. And then he didn't buy the V. I had one of the Vs, the really nice set neck Vs that came out, but he bought the Explorer. So they had a V and an Explorer of that rock and roll or whatever, but they were nice guitars. Really cool. Yeah. Like 76, 75.
75, 76, yeah.
Here's an interesting guitar. A real quick story. So Alan Hornato, Encore Audio, sound guy.
Yep.
Partner Jeff Burkhart, guitar player, my age, first band I was ever in. He was doing sound too. So he's the band I was in that went to Ed's house to get the head. But before I tell that story, he calls me up one day. He goes, "Hey, I'm doing a PA gig. You want to help me?" I go, "Yeah." So he picks me up. Van Halen's going to do a party. I said, "Cool." So we drive out to UCLA, and there's these like 3 dorms. They're kind of like at a pyramid, triangle, and there's a little courtyard in the bottom. And I guess either Dave or the band knew some girl who went to college there, and she was having like a little party. So we bring small, like a couple 212 with a horn cabinet, some monitors, just simple stuff. Put them on a couple chairs on the side. They set up on the ground. And 15 people, maybe 18 people, just smoking, having beers, just barbecue. And Van Halen was playing. And so Ed was playing a guitar. He was playing, I've never seen a photo of it or heard about it. It was a early 60s, late 50s double cutaway Gibson TV or Gibson Junior. Solid wood, like stained, like the finish was taken off, double cutaway like Leslie West's. But he had a mini humbucker with the cover off screwed into it. He took the P90 off it.
Okay.
And that was all he had. He had one guitar. He used that the whole time. And it sounded exactly like Van Halen. Sounded great.
Yeah, there was a couple of there was a junior. Let's see, there was a couple juniors. That was you said double cutaway though, right? Just now. It
was a double cutaway, and it was like just a mahogany color.
Okay.
And it looked like a gold mini. Like I remember the cover being up, but I think the slugs were gold. Like it came off a.
I remember seeing that guitar in pictures, the darker double cutaway junior, yeah. And then he has the Sunburst one that almost made the cover of Van Halen 1 that was taken. Pictures were taken of that guitar during the sessions for the photos for Van Halen 1, but they didn't use them.
Oh,
yeah. But people always go, "What happened? What would have happened if the photos and the guitar would have been a junior instead of the black and white guitar?"
Actually, I don't know why he did that or how he got that hair up his ass to do that, but I mean, yeah, it would. And that's another thing. Then people started painting their guitars, and then Randy did the polka dot, and then you could try to find your own little thing,
Yeah, that's what I was telling somebody on here not long ago was that people complain about, or I guess Ed complained about people copying his stripes back in the day, but what he did was create this synergy where people really wanted to do their own thing, their own version of this. And so it became polka dots. It became, circles. It became graphics. It became sky's the limit on what you could put on your guitar now.
Well, I have a guitar here.
Yeah, let's see it.
Now, it just has this is my Strat kind of for overdubs. It has just a Marzo HS2 in it, but it used to have a P90 in it. So I have like 5 pick arts for this guitar.
Yeah.
But this was made the same time Randy's polka dot V. This is Carl Sandoval. Made the same time Randy's V. And I hear there's a photo of both these bodies, his V and this one, drying at the same time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I made this. It's a Mighty Might body. It's heavy as hell. It's ash.
Right.
I gave John Gadesi he needed some silver things, so he gave me these gold ones to put in here. But and you design your own headstock. I didn't want to Spender headstock. Randy's headstock's crazy because all these headstocks were paddles. They were big squares, and you can cut anything you want out. He had a bunch of these Dan Electro necks, but this thing's been played and loved.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
I've had this since I think he made it in 80, 79. I've had it.
Let's see the whole headstock. Let me see the whole headstock. I can't see the end of it. Okay, so it's more of a rounded thing.
And the idea was he curved these stripes over. They should have ended here. So it's like, well, that 2 black stripes or 2 white stripes? It's kind of weird. But he painted it. It's nitrocellulose, so it's all like tricked out. But it's hard.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, that became like not only the super strat, thing, but also this graphic thing. And we talk about what would have happened if he wouldn't have put any kind of graphic on there? Would that even happened? Would we even have seen would the 80s been the same had Eddie not put stripes on his guitar?
That was an eye catcher. I mean, you looked right at it.
Right.
And I remember going to. I'm sorry.
You remember when you first saw the stripe, the white and black?
Oh, was it the Civic? Probably. No. Was it before that? Or that's a
77. I want to say it's when it was first striped.
He had the at Kazars. He had the 335. It started off, the first Strat he had wasn't painted. It was just, but I think he had the wherewithal to put the humbucker in it, but it still had a pickup and still had the other pickups in it, I think. There's a photo of him playing it.
Yeah.
And it's got a Fender. And then I don't know, but then he went to Charvel and got his own body. I think so I don't know where that guitar is I never saw him play it. I just saw a photo.
This guitar behind me, the white and black, was a Boogie Body's neck and body that had been shipped to Wayne as a second. Or maybe only the body was a second, but Wayne had them, and Eddie ran upon them in Wayne's shop. These have come down from Oregon is where, maybe it was Washington, Oregon, wherever Boogie Bodies was. Len Ellsworth was. He shipped down these parts, and then they ended up in Wayne's shop, and then Eddie picked them up.
Yes, I had a Boogie Body's neck. It's funny. I did have a Boogie Body rosewood neck on a guitar that was made, and I didn't want it anymore. And I parted the guitar. I wanted to get a different neck. I don't know what happened, but I put it in the recycler, that paper, and a guy called me like immediately. And this is this is back then. I mean, this is like 80, 81.
Yeah.
And because the guitar I got another Dan Electro neck, and I like that better. But this was wide and flat, rosewood, and it said Boogie Bodies, like, written on the headstock. But this guy knew what it was, and I love to have that neck back. But it was glossy, if you got sweaty, it stuck and all that. But
so that neck, let me ask you this about the Boogie Bodies neck, because primarily, and this was a discussion that my friend Donnie Ward, who is a genius when it comes to these necks, and he built this neck. The Boogie Body's neck was flatter, right, and wider than what we would have had before that Strat or Les Paul. Is that right?
I don't remember it being as flat as the Dan Electro neck, which is almost flat.
Okay.
Maybe that's why I liked it at that point.
Yeah.
It was not as curved as like a regular Strat neck, but it was definitely wider and thinner this way, like you'd think a Jackson or a Charvel neck would be.
Sure.
Fender headstock, made well, adjusted at the butt like a vintage. Take it off to adjust if you had it.
This is supposed to be cut from the same templates as those, so it's, I don't know if you can really see it. This is made by Donnie Ward and Chris Locke.
Okay.
They have the original templates that were made for the body itself.
I can really tell by the way you're holding it.
Yeah,
What the heck? They're going to be in the same room.
Yeah, all right.
I think it's made well.
Oh yeah, it's great, fantastic. Wow. And this is
where are they based? Where are they located out
of? Chris is on the East Coast. I want to say up near New York, and Donnie's down in Florida, South Florida. But
that's sweet.
Donnie's like a historian on the neck, and they've gotten all original. Like when they're doing these copies of necks and whatever, they'll get them and they'll actually digitize them, and they're able to reproduce the exact dimension.
Well, I wonder if Boogie Body's made several different models. Like, what if you wanted a real narrow C shape? Would it do that for you? I mean,
yeah, I think so. I mean, Donnie knows Lynn really well, and they just did a video. They actually just interviewed Lynn in the last 2 weeks, and Lynn went through all the detail on all these things. So it's really cool.
I'll text you a photo of me playing the guitar. You can look at it. Maybe you can see. I don't know.
Love to check it out. So, when you were doing this gig at the International Casino, this is what year was this?
76, 77, probably 77.
So with all these bands on the bill, okay, how did these gigs run? I mean, like you would do 45 or 30 or what?
Yeah, band play a set. So we play a set, like, start at 9 o'clock or whatever. Now the second band, Sky People, do you know anything about them?
You were telling me a little bit. Go ahead.
They were a 4-piece band. Randy Jones was the singer. He's still singing. He was originally in Stormer before they got Tom Hart, lead vocalist. Great singer, great presence. But the guitar player and bass player were the Moreland brothers, Mark and Bruce Moreland, who later went on to form Wall of Voodoo. I'm on radio. Right. And the drummer, Scotty Desborough, who's in Great White, original member of Great White.
Okay.
So, but they were from like that area with like Rusty Anderson, De La Habra, Whittier area. But they had like dancers and they had like crazy, like very Bowie like outfits, and they were like a glam space Sky People. They're from outer space, and they played a flying V through a Sun Concert lead, solid state amp, and he got the dirtiest, heaviest, nastiest just sound. We loved it. That's Mark Moreland who's with us, but as Bruce still plays.
I was just say Sky People. That for some reason that's ringing a bell about something that somebody said. Roth mentioned it in a cut when he was doing a vocal take. They would say something on stage. I forgot what the phrase was, but he apparently repeated this phrase as he was tracking vocals, and it's on tape.
Saying something about Sky People?
If it's the band I'm thinking of that was like alien, like they would dress up.
Oh, no. That's probably Zolar X.
That's it. Zolar X.
Now those guys, they would talk like beep, bump, beep, bump, and like we really are aliens. You couldn't get it. Yeah. No.
Different.
They were more Bowie-ish, but yeah. Zolar X. They used to play at the Rodney Bingenheimer, the English. He had a place called Rodney Bingenheimer's English Disco, and they used to play there.
Yeah.
Jones out there, and you'd see like it was like a little place to go, the Dolls. Those glam kind of bands would go there. And I guess they were like the house band. They played there a lot.
Yeah.
Zolar, yeah.
Apparently they hung out with around them and saw them, whatever, So he had nicked that one little phrase they would do, like we all have our catchphrases, right?
That's right.
Right.
What's the catchphrase for Van Halen stories?
I don't have one. I need one, don't I?
How about Jeff Goebbels' Delight?
Jeff Goebbels' Delight. I have one in my bands. It's just simply "Thank you, dancers." Is my main.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
I say it all the time. Thank you, dancers, every night. They actually got me a shirt with it on at one point, so that's how pervasive it is in my vocabulary.
Well, I'm telling you, Van Halen stories that actually personally happened to me. Not so much like, like where the neck came from. So I don't know about a lot of that stuff, but these are just like run-ins with the band.
Right.
And that's not right. Personalized stories.
Of course. Yeah. And there was this one one of the things that I've been digging for a long time, and what I'm coming to right here probably, and that is the Lost Luna's house. you lived in Arcadia, and Los Lunas House, there's not a lot known about it. There's not a lot of people that have been over there or were there at the time. Nobody really knows for sure. We think that his bedroom was on the back of the house, and it was an add-on to the house. And you have a little information on that and the story.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
So what happened was this guy, Jeff Kolar, Jeff Burkhart, sound guy, the guy I went to did the PA gig with at UCLA. This was before that. Yeah. So we're seniors in high school, both of us. And we played in the band. We played off and on in bands. So it's 1975. And at the school, Arcadia High School, they'd have assemblies, like a pep rally. Sure. Usually a pep rally. And there'd be some kind of entertainment. There'd be a band like Hello People, or just different bands would come in and play, or they'd have, the marching band would come in, all that kind of crap. So somehow Jeff finagled us to get some musicians together. We're going to play at this assembly. I'm like, what are we going to do? He goes, we're going to learn some songs and we're going to rock out. We're going to be crazy. I said, okay. So he had connections for gear. He had a bunch of gear. So I bought that 335. I actually bought from him. And he had a Dan Armstrong clear guitar with an Ampeg V4. I mean, we had just weird gear, but we had a bunch of cabs and stuff from Allen and stuff, but we didn't have a lot of heads. So it was Jeff on guitar, me on guitar, a bass player, and then a guy named Dennis Walsh played drums, who played later on in punk bands. He was in the Flyboys, the Crowd. He's still around. He went that way. So we put makeup on and the whole thing, and we went out and we played Strutter, Jeepster by Mark Bolan, T-Rex, and Suffragette City by David Bowie. Played 3 songs. Right. So anyway, he goes, I'm going to pick you up early tomorrow. The school's 8 o'clock. The assembly's like at 10. He goes, we're going to get some gear. I said, okay. So he picks me up like 6:30 in the morning. And we drive to Ed's house. Never been there. I didn't even know where he lived. So we're driving, and he lives on Los Lunas Street, but you go past his house and there's an alleyway where when you're driving, you see in the backyards of the house that's on the next street, and then to his house, right? It's kind of a dirt. I think you put your trash cans out there and the city would drive through and get it. Mm-hmm. So we pull up and we pull in this gate, and we're seeing the back of the house and this little chicken coop, like add-on garagey type thing. So we walk up, just me and Jeff, and we knock on the door, and his mother comes to the door, and she says, hello. And we said, yeah, we're here to pick up Ed's amp. And she says, he told me, and she just points to the door, and then she goes back in the house. So we open the door, and you walk in, and straight ahead is like a couch, or actually it's a bed. There's no back on it. There's a coffee table with a bag of like 500 guitar picks. They all say Berry and Grassmuck on them. Berry and Grassmuck was a music store on Colorado Boulevard. Terry Kilgore told me, he was there when Alex ordered his double bass Ludwig with his mother, and Eddie got a gold top from there. That's where they got their first good instruments. Mm-hmm. Over here, there's like a chest of drawers, 12, one of those old kind of gold things to put records in, maybe 20 records. Black Oak, Arkansas, Launch and Roll, live is there. Cream, fresh Cream, not for Wheels of Fire. Right. On the wall, a Cream poster that came with one of the albums, black and white, the 3 of them. And then the best thing, a shitty TV set on one of those old kind of roller square brass kind of stands. Yeah. And a photo, like a 7x5 photo of him, like in 5th grade. Like he's got a plaid shirt on, his hair's kind of combed, and he's smiling, like a class photo. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So when you open the door, that's here. But behind the door, you have to close the door. And he had 3 cabs, the 2 he uses, and a brand new slant basket weave grill cabinet, that would come with like a JMP, the 100-watt Holy Grail head, and that blonde basement. I didn't see any other amps there. So Jeff takes the head, my friend. He goes, Ed says, like, we borrow the head. We need some amps back. I said, okay. And I remember looking at the back of it, and like there was a full-on slotted bolt. Like he's covered up a hole in the back of it. I mean, big, like it's almost the size of like a nickel. And I thought that was weird. Like there might have been some modded done to it, but the amp was stock as far as I could tell. So anyway, we took the head, we went there, put the amp up there on top of the stuff. Nobody plugged into it. I had a bassman, he had a V4, and we just played these songs. And with me, and people were like, you know, like you didn't do that back then. We were all glammed out, and we played the gig. And then I don't know what happened after that. Jeff must have went up and brought it off. But I would be at Jeff's house, at his grandparents' house on Fairview Ave in Arcadia, and the doorbell would ring, and it'd be Eddie and Alex. And Jeff had a nice 50-watt small box 4-input that we bought. We went to a place called Aeolian Music, which isn't there anymore. It was under the freeway on Melrose, way down the non-hip way towards Silver Lake. Mm-hmm. And we went in there one time, and this head was there, and the guy wanted $350 for it. And Jeff's like, I got to have this head. And so I said, well, I had like $450 in the bank. So I just gave him the money. We bought the head, and he paid me back. And that was the head that Ed used to borrow. Mm-hmm. And now I don't know if he needed it just for, I don't know if he ever used it, but he wanted it for, you know, look good. And so they knew each other real well too. This Jeff, who's on Facebook, Jeff Burkhart. And he still does sound. Cadillac sound. He does, again, these guys are old school, pull up a truck, bring the big mixers, you know, I mean, it's, you know, if you're doing like an accordion and acoustic guitar, they would have enough sound to do Cal Jam, you know, it's like overkill. Everything's overkill. But that was a cool story. Yeah. So I was actually in the room, and now here's the question I asked myself.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Yeah.
He wasn't at home. He wasn't, maybe he's in the house. He didn't have a gig. So he didn't like meet somebody and go spend the night somewhere. His gear's there. I don't know where he was. 6:30 in the morning. Maybe he was at somebody's house, you know. But
ask you about the room now, because this is what is okay. Now, when I looked at the house now from the back, from the alley, you see a room kind of to the left of the house.
Yeah.
Just off the main part of the house. If you're looking from the backyard,
yeah.
To the left, there's a little shacky building. Is that the room, or is it on the right side?
No, left. That's it.
On the left.
Yeah.
Side.
So when you look at the house, the back door is here, and it was to the left.
Yeah.
There was a door close to the house, but you walk in, and I don't know what was over here. There must have been a bathroom in there, or maybe not. Maybe he went in the house. You know.
Right.
Maybe he was in the house sleeping. I mean. It looked like a bedroom to me. I mean, you got a bureau, got a coffee table, and but there was no like refrigerator or anything. You know,
you saw that. You know, I sent you the picture of them sitting in that. It looked like a room. Looked like that room, maybe.
Yeah.
With the guitar with the white and black back here, sitting there, and it looked like a couch. And everybody says they think that's the room, but you were in it, so that's why I'm asking you.
You know. We were so focused on the amp, but I did look around and I remember those things vividly. There's no bullshit about that. Yeah. I don't know what was going on over here. Could there have been a bathroom? I don't think so. There was a window there, and that might be the window he was leaning against, because there was no windows this way. This way was solid wall.
Right.
Might have been a window next to the door coming in, because it wasn't really super dark in there. We turned a light on, and I think, and it was normal. But I don't know what was over there, if there was another chair or if there was but maybe he was sitting, maybe there was some kind of a chair there and he was sitting. He has no shirt on, that photo?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's playing the guitar with the Dan Electro neck.
Yeah.
The star or whatever. And yeah, it could have been there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, did that room actually have a door into the main house, or was it just...
No, I don't think so. He had to walk out.
So it was a totally separate building. Yeah, because when you look at it from the back, you don't see how it could be connected to the house internally.
No, I don't think it was.
Yeah, that's interesting.
No,
it is California. It's not like you're going to freeze.
All was taken up with gear and a bureau with the records on top of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really cool, though, to have a inside view of what the room was like and what he had in there. So my question to you, there's another question. There's around the gear thing. Now, I ran into this in particular, an amplifier that I've seen in pictures with Van Halen. It's a white Marshall 73. I've seen it in two pictures. One is Van Halen's all sitting on a stage, and it's behind him up on
sent me that. Yeah.
Seen that?
You sent me.
I sent you that. Well, then there's a picture of Chris Holmes that's not widely distributed, but it's in Doug's place. of Chris Holmes standing there with the destroyer. Behind him again, there's a white Marshal. And being that those Marshals, when I asked, I think it was Doug or somebody about the picture that you see, a couple of what looks like white stacks behind him, and I think it's the Civic. He said those are the ones where they totally pulled the Tolex off, and it was actually the ones you see that he used to put down on the floor. There was one head that didn't have any covering that he's had it forever. But yeah, so I didn't know if you had any recollection of these particular heads.
I don't remember the white heads. I remember the heads. I remember was the Holy Grail head.
Mm-hmm.
He had Sound City 50 Plus. I told you that story. I told that in the.
No,
I went to the Rock. I went to the Rock Corporation to see Van Halen play, and I noticed Ed had his stack there, but then he had a head turned around, so you could see the back of the amp and then the speaker cord going around to the cab. And I said to him, I go, what happened to the amp? He goes, my amp's in the shop. He goes, so I'm just borrowing that amp. He goes, and I'm just like, I don't want, like he was ashamed. It was a Sound City 50 Plus, little with the multicolored knobs.
Yeah.
And he just want people to, I don't know, but it's of course sounded amazing. Like, I said he could play through a transistor radio and sound like, it's in his hands,
Right,
but anyway, so he goes, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of, I'm not digging the way it looks or something like that. And I said, okay. And that was that. But yeah.
There's this story that Phil X told, and I've heard this from other sources, but Eddie had apparently just a ton of gear up at 5150 that he had in a garage somewhere. And inside there, I think that the way I understand it, there's a lot of different things like this Sound City gear that you're talking about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, the other ramp that he played through that we kind of had a connection with was he had an AC50 head, the Vox, but it was the score, the British ones. You have to change the. I had an AC100 at one point, an Allen Hornato, the Encore Audio, wired it so I could plug it into the wall because it had some weird plug. But and the speaker jacks I think were like XLR type. He fixed it all for me. Anyway, and you could see that on the floor at the Whiskey. Because that was another time. So when they got signed, they stopped playing locally when they went into recording and got signed. But they would play just to kind of keep their chops up and keep the public interested. They'd play. I remember them playing the Whiskey at least 3 times, but like once a month. So they would play like once, then wait a month and play again, then wait a month, and then they went off to tour with Black Sabbath. Then they were gone.
Right.
But then they came back. Here's another funny story. I've heard. They came back and they did a show at Long Beach Arena where they headlined. And this is before, the first album was out, but they played at Long Beach Arena. And I guess Ed went to his car to get something. And he tried to get back in and they're like, where's your dude? They goes, I'm in the band. They go, no, you heard that story?
I haven't.
No. Yeah. And so somebody walked by and goes, hey, and the guy says, it came out like the road manager or somebody goes, no, he's in the band. They go, oh, we didn't know. Because he didn't have a pass on him or anything. He just went to his car, but he couldn't get back in.
Right.
And
that's happened to me.
I would have went. And all of a sudden, what do you mean they played Long Beach? It wasn't widely advertised, or I don't know what happened, but they and I don't know who else was on the bill, but they played the Long Beach Arena. I don't think they've ever played Long Beach Arena. That was a lot of bands played there. I saw a lot of great shows at Long Beach, but it was always the Forum with them. Van Halen 2, saw Woman and Children First, saw Fair Warning, and then I missed Diver Down and I missed 1984, but then I saw the 5150 tour with Sammy, and then I saw the 2000 or whatever it was when they had the reunion with Sammy.
Right.
But all those shows were just, the crowd was on their feet the whole time, and it was like they could do no wrong.
Right.
The Children First and the Farewell, all that stuff, and it was mixed well. I always had like a low seat. I'd be kind of on the side, on Ed's side, kind of not right next to him, but like in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the floor, but yeah, it was crazy.
Tracy said that, it was like comparing when he saw him in the backyard parties, he was like, it was just a bigger place. They were doing exactly what they did back then.
Oh, they had all the lights and they had all those flag cabinets. Now John Gadesi had and Dennis Oleski, they had a bunch of those flag cabinets when they played with Cats and Dogs. They were like just big white. I think they're on the
Fair warning.
It was like the 1984 tour. Didn't they have those in?
They recycled, I think, everything from 81 to 84, from what I can understand. It looked like they used the same flag cabinets. Then they painted the surrounds red when they got to a certain point. I'm not sure exactly whether it was 82 or 80 or 84. But, they did it in 83. You saw them at the US Festival, the same cabinets.
Yeah.
Red surrounds now. And so I think they just recycled those from 81.
Probably. Yeah.
I mean, I've found multiple people that have them, and they still have the 812 cab, the full, the big old monsters.
And Mike had the big, like an 18 with the chrome dome. That's what I was going to say. There's a rehearsal studio in North Hollywood. God, I can't remember the name of it. It's not Mates. It's shit. There's like 3 little rooms, and then there's a bigger room, and the stage is the Diver Down stage. It's the black and white. They somehow got a piece of that. It's pretty good size. I don't think it's the whole, but it's like the front, and they use that. So if you rehearse there, you'd be on that stage. They somehow acquired like cool. A right that that.
Yeah, the little kind of triangular thing that they had on the front.
It was like a. Yeah, but this was like black and white, red and white stripes going out like in a pattern, like the Japanese flag. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, there's a few friends of mine have been on here, and we're trying to track down these like things like.
What's the name of the studio? Shit. Go there and rent a small room. Like I remember Kiss rented. Steve Vai was in there rent a small room because Gene Simmons was saying, well, if we play in a big stage and some people are up to snuff, I can't hear the mistakes, but in this room, if you hit a wrong note, I'm going to hear it. So they would purposely go in the little room, to get to before they went on a big stage, just to get the songs together.
Yeah, right. To be tight. Sure.
Well, he got back in the band. They went in this little room to brush, get the cobwebs off and make sure everybody was playing the same song.
Sure. Yeah. Like I was saying, that me and a bunch of other guys that are on this show, we're trying to track down things like the backdrops from 81, where they had the destroyed city in the background, and they also had the cityscape. We're trying to. I like Terminator. We think we know where some of that is.
The guy had the hammer behind his back, like the exterminator thing, and then the big lion. Remember the lion one?
Yeah. Where is this stuff? Where is this stuff at?
That's memorabilia. I don't know.
Yeah, we gotta find it. Yeah. So when you go back and think about Eddie, you were just saying this earlier about his transition in 77 to the album, how fast this second part of his technique happened after this raw Van Halen that everybody talks about from back then. There was this point where his tapping showed up. And now he claims, and I just saw this in a video of him talking, that he started messing around with that tapping in 74, 75 is what he said. This was a Bob Costa's interview, the tapping thing. He was asking him about it in particular. He said, I started messing around with it in 74, 75. I would turn my back to the audience when I did it. Is that true?
At the Whiskey, when he would play, he would turn his back to the crowd, and because the whole room was full of guitar players.
Sure.
And thinking like, what? And it's funny because I've worked at Guitar Mania. I used to work at PC Rich. So I met Tracy G. We worked together from 87 to 89 at PC Rich Guitars. And I worked at ESP Guitars in the late 90s. And guys from Detroit who moved here, who were great guitar players, said, dude, I learned how to play Eruption not knowing he was tapping. Like they could play it picking it.
Sure.
I'm like, you're crazy. That's crazy. They go, we didn't know he was tapping. We just heard like the notes. And so I sat there. It took me a fucking month to figure it out. And he could play it tapping, with a pick.
Yeah.
This guy did. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, he goes, Alex actually learned it that way too.
See any of that? They had no idea how he was doing it. There's a video, so it was crazy.
That's what I said a lot of times here, just for people who are younger, because there are still a lot of younger kids still picking up on Van Halen, obviously from the YouTube generation, they've been able to see everything right out of the gate. But for us, I had heard of this tapping thing.
What is it you speak of?
Huh?
What is it you speak of? Yeah.
This tapping thing, I kind of knew about it. I'm trying to remember how I visually figured it out, but I had heard about this thing and I'd seen the pictures, but
all right. So the origins of tapping. Now, not the constant diddle, but the
yeah, right.
Well, Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, Billy Gibbons does it, right? 73. But Brian May on News of the World on a song called "It's Late."
Okay.
Who's one of my Eddie, Jeff Beck, and Brian May are my top 3 of all time.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's another story I forgot. There's another guy we got to bring into the conversation here.
Okay.
Gary Putman.
Okay.
Gary Putman, he's somebody you should talk to. He's not really on Facebook, but he's probably has a ton of Van Halen stories. Him and I went to see Queen at the Forum, Day at the Races tour. Thin Lizzy open, Gary Moore playing. And Ed runs up to us. He went to every concert. Every time you go to show, Ed would be there. He'd come up and he says, "We got signed today." And we're like, "What do you mean?" He goes, we signed a record deal today. We're going to put a record out. And we're like, "No shit." And we're like, nobody put records out until the punk thing happened. And then it became like, you have a cassette, but to promote your band to make a record was expensive. You might do a 45, but so anybody who put a record out, we're like, damn. And then he went to his seat. We went to ours, watched the show. Oh, he was talking about, again, he goes, Brian May. He goes, "What do you think of Brian May?" He goes, "His tone doesn't really cut through." That's what he said. But then later on, they're great friends. And
right.
And I'll reference the last story I have involves Gary Putman and Brian May, all that. We'll talk about that at the end. But
okay,
it's amazing. Remember all this shit.
I know, right?
My wife, I talked to my wife. She goes, "Yeah, but how's that going to translate into any money?" I'm just as God made me. Anyway, that was fun stuff.
I know, man. That's exactly, your wife and my wife need to hook up.
No.
Right there, like.
Now here's another Van Halen story that I think is interesting.
All right, go ahead.
So I go to a party. I don't even know how I found out about this party. It's way down in Temple City at like a small house that was kind of rustic, like maybe a musician lived there or something. I think a girl I knew invited me, just a friend. So I go to this party, and there's maybe 20 people there, and we're in the whole house. No band playing. So when you pull up the driveway, there's like 4 houses on a property. And when you pull up the driveway, you walk into the kitchen. The front of the house is over here, but everybody was going in the kitchen door. So when you walk in, the first thing you see is a stove, and there's people. So I walk in, and I say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Talking to her. And so I started talking to this dude about, he was a bass player, I think. We started talking about music. And Ed walks in. Ed Van Halen walks in. And I'm like, "Hey," it was like, what's going on? He goes, and the vibe I got was, I'm off tour, I'm home, I'm bored. I heard about this party from somebody. So he was talking to somebody a little bit. And then he comes over and starts talking to me and this guy, who I can't remember the guy. He wasn't anybody I really knew. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Want to hear the new album?" And he pulls out a cassette. We're like, "Yeah." So we go into this guy's car. He goes, "I got a cassette player in my car." So we go in the driveway. Ed gets a shotgun. This kid who owns the car isn't driving. Some other kid's next to me here, and I'm behind Ed in the back seat. And he puts the tape in. And then this kid here goes, "You want to smoke a joint?" And I'm not a big pot smoker, but I'm like, and I was like, "Yeah." So we passed around a joint, and I hear, it was In the Cradle Will Rock. The album hadn't come out yet, and we're listening to it. And the running order was not what it came out to be. So we heard Cradle Will Rock. We heard Everybody Wants Some and Fools. I remember hearing those songs in their entirety. And I'm like, we're like silent the whole time it's playing. And he's just sitting there in the chair, and we're just all sitting there like, fuck, And then we got out of the car and went back in the house, and he just disappeared. It was almost like it just kind of, like a weird Close Encounter of the Fourth Kind. We actually go to the, and yeah, that actually happened. And he was just sharing, and then women, children came, and then went to, yeah. So he was home and just normal, kind of quiet, just, and but it was just weird. Like, look up if he walks in the house, like, that's Ed Van Halen. Hey, what's he doing here? And he was just want to get out of the house.
Wow. So tell you know, one of the things that I try to uncover about Eddie is, you know, his personality, his persona. You know, obviously it's kind of like he was almost the reluctant rock star. He would always say, "I hate being called the rock star." Now you knew him all the way back. You know, from what I understand, he stayed.
I think he was a shy kind of guy.
Yeah,
he was talented, but I think he was. But you know what, shy. But when he got on stage, you know, all that went away. You know, he just lit it up. And then in public, though, he wasn't super social. That's why when he came in, I was thinking, like, this is unusual. I mean, you think he'd have a bunch of people around him because, you know, to walk in, just anybody walking into some kind of place it could be intimidating, you know. But he wanted to get out. But yeah, I'm sorry. So your point was,
well, just because, you know, we're trying to understand him as a person all the way from his youth as you know, because I kind of always, this is just an impression I got over the years, is he did have sort of a social anxiety from what I can understand. Did you read that?
So I have a couple take the edge off, you know, Schlitz Mall.
And then did he loosen up after that?
I think so. I mean, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but the vibe I got was, but you know what's funny? I think that they used to drink a lot of stuff, but I never saw him just like sloppy drunk. He never played bad. He never tripped over. Never said bad, stupid shit. I mean, you know, the interaction, even like on stage, he never went to the mic and started, you know, yeah, hey, what the hell, you know, nothing like that. It wasn't. He was a total pro that way, and
right. And did you perceive the band as that kind of? I mean, there's a lot of credence given to Roth and his ability to rally the troops in the band to focus them into this thing they became. You know, it was like he sort of had a vision, and he managed to get them to get the look together and kind of be a little bit more accessible widely musically.
Well, look at the video what's the video where they do the where they're all dressed up and they do the Saturday Night Fever thing and all that.
Yeah.
Which one?
Offer Teacher.
Do you think they would ever think of that? That's all Dave, yeah. And I love it.
Yeah.
Or what's the one where they're all dressed like natives? Is that Pretty Woman? Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is Dave. And you know, people back in the day like, they're not going to make it. He's not that great a singer. And I always thought, I go, you know, because I like all kinds of garage rock and stuff where that guy's not a good singer. Yeah, but he's got a vibe, and it's bigger than that, man. It's like, you know, Bill Wyman, they could replace him and get a better bass player in the Stones. No, you know, Mick Martin, no, they got a chemistry. Those guys don't touch anything. And you know, if you get too muso about it, like we need I heard one time they wanted Billy Sheehan to be in the band instead of Mike. No. I mean, do another band, but don't fuck this band up. You know, leave this band alone.
Right.
Because it's the chemistry. It's the sum of its parts. You know. And Dave, I first of all, I think he's a great singer. I like his voice, and he was the difference maker. I mean, there's a lot of guys, you know, that from, you know, guitar players that, you know, some of them, it should have been me. And I was like, no, he had the band. He's ahead of us in line. He's ahead. You go, you know, it's his turn. And that's how I think about it.
Yeah. You think that, like, you know, what Tracy G said, it was that they had every aspect covered, and that they were the complete package. They had every person and part, plus the chemistry that you're talking about and the vision.
And more than that, it's very difficult to get a virtuosic musician who writes simple pop songs.
Yeah.
Steve Vai's a great player. I love him.
Right.
Doesn't write music that translate like Jamie's Crying does, or like, you know, Dance the Night Away.
Sure. That's
so pop. I love it. But it's like, and he does his thing, but he's not just shredding like Yngwie all over it. He's tasteful in a shredder kind of way. I mean, he's not. I wouldn't call Eddie a shredder, but he's flashy. He can add the flash and the panache to a pop song that's danceable and catchable, so everybody likes it. You don't have to be into some kind of like brainiac fusion music to get into Van Halen, you know. And that, I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
Great writing with virtuosic guitar playing, but not so heavy-handed that you alienate anybody. You draw people in.
Right.
Guitar players love you, musicians love you, and the girl going down to the beach with her friends at spring break loves it. And so it's win-win-win.
Right. You think about, you know, when we think about his impact as a player, the things that you're talking about, you know, you are. I think that because Roth was there, he like Paul Gilbert had said this in an interview, that Eddie would punctuate Roth's lyrical content with licks. You would hear, like in Beautiful Girls, how Dave would say one thing and Eddie would answer that thing.
Oh, his Holland thing. That I never thought about that, but sure.
They had that thing where they were bouncing off each other, and it was a chemistry thing. But that also led itself to this general wide acceptance that Eddie Van Halen, his name, because he became, you know, maybe the Michael Jackson solo helped this, and his marriage to Valerie Bertinelli, but his swath as far as how many people in the world knew who he was that were not musicians was much wider than maybe anybody in history. I mean, maybe Hendrix is the only person I can think of that had that kind of, you know, you knew him no matter who you were.
But again, Hendrix wrote catchy pop songs: Foxy Lady, Purple Haze, Crosstown Traffic. I mean, these are not really hard songs to get into.
Yeah.
And the guitar solos, you know, you want the guitar solos. My favorite Hendrix album is Band of Gypsies. There's some just great guitar playing on that. That's just to kick back and like, I'm going to get schooled right now. But if you listen to Foxy Lady or Purple Haze, they're hit songs,
sure.
You know. And I'm probably leaving some out. Dolly Dagger, Freedom. I mean, all those songs are great. But yeah, he transcended. It was just the right combination of everything. And you know, the funny thing, I talked about the club scene in Van Halen too. The way things were in LA at that time, they were on the cusp of getting a record deal. They were playing the Starwood. I never saw them at the Starwood, but they know they played there a lot. I saw a lot of the bands there. And they just made it. And overnight, I mean, in 24 hours, all the clubs were punk and new wave. All of them. It was like one day it was like Stormer Van Halen, and the next day it was like Alley Cats, X, the Controllers. I mean, it just changed overnight. And then, so would they have been left behind? You know, there weren't platforms and stuff. Would they have been left behind? I don't think Ed would have been denied, but it might have been a little tougher. Now, Europe, you know, that's like Chris Holmes moved to Europe because it's his kind of music's still popular over there. He couldn't get a gig here. You know, I mean, nothing against him. There's a guy you should interview. Talk to Chris.
I haven't, but he's definitely on my list. You know.
Oh yeah, and Kilgore, Terry Kilgore, another great guitar.
Yeah, both of those guys. No. I mean, yeah, I've got a long list of some. You know, there's. You know, do you know if Jimmy Bates is still alive?
He's not alive.
Okay.
And Jimmy Bates. Well, here's my tribute to Jimmy Bates.
All right.
I know Van Halen has one of these, but I have one because of Jimmy Bates.
Ah, yeah. The Megazone.
That look at that thing,
dude.
On Worship.
Oh wow! I just saw one online.
John Gadesi made this guitar for me.
Yeah.
We got to talk. He's a great guitar builder player, but he made this for me when he worked at Valley Arts, so '95. Okay. But
so that's where John's from, Valley Arts.
He started at Charvel way back in the day, sanding bodies.
Okay.
And then he was in bands. He is a recording engineer, and he had to make a decision. He was going to get married and said, I'm going to make a decision. Am I going to be a recording engineer with weird, crazy hours, or am I going to build guitars? He went to ESP. They gave him a guitar and said, make one of these. Mm-hmm. He made one. They hired him, and he was the custom shop guy. This is late 90s. He was the custom shop guy at ESP. Then he got hired at YGD, Yamaha Guitar Development. And he's the guy like Alan Holmes would come in, they'd sit down, he'd on AutoCAD a guitar, and then John would make one, not CNC, pin router. This is all made.
You know, this is killing
He'd
me.
make one, and then Alan Holmes would go, the next too fat. He'd make another one. He'd go, okay, it's perfect. Then they send the plans overseas and they mass produce it. So anyway, he went from ESP to Schecter, owned by the same people, Shibuya. And then he went from Schecter. Now he works for Gretsch. He moved to Phoenix and he works for Gretsch for Fender. And I'm sitting, all the stuff is sitting in a beautiful EVH amp I got from him. I got the 50-watt 606 112 combo right here. Anyway, we're really good friends. I talk to him all the time. And yeah, he made me a bunch of guitars. He made me an Explorer and a V. And when John worked there, Mike Tempesta worked there. He was in Powerman 5000. And his brother's a drummer for the Cult. And he plays with, yeah. Well, I went with those guys to see the reunion with Sammy. That was not so great.
Okay, so Tim Pest is now I believe it, at least for my last guest, is the new artist development guy at EVH.
Really?
Yeah.
I about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mike. I'm pretty sure Mike Tim Pest worked with Frankie Lindia, who was just my last guest.
I'll be damned. Okay, small world,
isn't it?
Small world.
And it goes all the way back to Eddie Van Halen in 1974.
He's a great unifier. It's the great unifier.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. You know, when you think about what his legacy has been, we think about like his guitar playing, but there's this thing that grew out of his influence that we all, you know, that's why I'm here with you. You know, it's because whatever happened with him and however that unified the world and through his live shows, it was this much bigger thing than. I mean, it's hard to put a scope on this because, like, literally all of our careers and our lives have been so impacted by it. I mean, you would have probably been in Dred Zeppelin anyway, and you probably would have done all the things you did anyway. But how do you think it influenced you over the years?
Well, you know, because it's like capturing light in a bottle. But it's like, I think the biggest thing, it's probably like when the Beatles were in Hamburg or in Liverpool playing, and you were in a band. You have that sense of like, oh, it can be done. I'm watching these people and they're doing it the same way. They're learning cover tunes and they're playing, and then they throw an original, and then they throw in a couple more originals. Then it's all original, and it's like then they put a record out, and we saw that more and more, like with like the new wave punk thing too, when it was just like all DIY, just do it yourself, you know, and but so it was in your backyard, actually seeing the progression of somebody really do it, but make it to an extreme level of success. I mean, that's crazy success. That's like the biggest band in the world success, you know. But I saw the bands too, you know. The Motley Crue thing was all, we knew those people and saw that whole thing happen, and just out of the blue, and they were more part of a scene. Band wasn't really in a scene; they were kind of by themselves. I mean, there was other bands. I saw the Boys with George Lynch, and that's a funny story about, you said imitating the Stripes. I remember going to Carl Sandoval's house one time, and he had a couple guitars that were waiting to get picked up, and he had the exact Bumblebee guitar. I go, whose is that? He goes, well, George wanted one. I go, so he never played it live, but he just wanted to have one.
Oh yeah.
So he's a fan, you know. It looked great. Looked just like it. I'm like, I picked it up. I hit a couple chords. I go, this is a nice guitar. He goes, yeah. So he was going to come over and pick it up sometime.
Well, Lynch is a fan, and I've been trying to get Lynch on.
But I really admire George as far as keeping the flame alive, man. I mean, he's always got something going. Kind of envious of him. He's always like, you know, he got a new band, a new album. He's doing a clinic. He's like, I mean, he's just together that way. He's always like, he's getting older like all of us, but he's still flying the flag, man, for guitar and rock and roll. And if you go to a NAMM show, he's always like at some kind of jam, some kind of thing happening or playing somewhere. He's always in the ESP.
It's funny because I just saw him, you know, he was here in town. And this is a weird connection that I made with Tracy. Their new, well, actually Mark Kendall's new singer, Great White, is a guy named Brett Carslisle, who's from Birmingham. So I've known about him for a while in a band called All or Nothing, who's been around here for a while, playing some of the same clubs I play. And so he ends up in Great White. And then I get to see Tracy, and I'm walking up to his house, and he goes, hey, do you know this kid, Brett Carslisle from Great White? He said, you're from Alabama, right? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you know this kid from Alabama? I said, yeah, of course I do. He goes, what a small world. You're in LA. And he said, Mark Kendall and him are going to come over and do some work with me in my studio. And sure,
that's awesome. They've
been working on it. But yeah, man, it's a strange connection across anybody in the music business that's been around long enough. There's some sort of connection we have.
It's funny you mentioned Great White because I had a band called Drastic Party, and the bass player was a guy named Dario Satius, and he played in a little while, and he played in Jack Russell's Great White. So there was this Great White, and then there was a Jack Russell Great White, and he played with Stephen Pearcy's solo band. He was a total '80s guy, Brazilian player, great bass player, great singer, and he I just happened to meet him, and they needed a bass player, and he was into the music. We were trying to be like at that time we were trying to be more like a Soundgarden-y kind of grungy thing, but he wanted to be in like Bon Jovi or Winger, or he really was '80s guy, or Skid Row or Guns N' Roses. So but he got in those bands, and all of a sudden he's playing for, I'm like, well, right on. He finally got his, thing. He took me to see the Viper Room would be called Camaro in Hollywood. It used to be FM station, Filthy McNasty's, then it turned to the Central, then it turned to the Viper Room. And Camaro would have, they were called Metal Shop, and it was the guys from Atomic Punks, but then somebody else was called Metal School, and they changed it to Metal Shop, one or the other, and then they turned into Atomic Punks. They did a bunch of tribute bands, but every like Tuesday night, the club turned into Club Camaro, and they would play. And I'm like, these guys are great. And they were playing like Winger, like Only 17, and Russ Parrish, and just knocking it out of the park. Just great. I'm like,
Steel Panther, more or less.
Great. And I saw Atomic Punks play at a small club in Sierra Madre called the Sunset, and it was Ralph, the singer, and
Rush.
There's a Dred Zeppelin documentary that's been shot. It's been in the can for like 4 or 5 years. It's pro shot. Mm-hmm. It's ready to go. And Ralph, the singer, did all the narration on it.
Oh wow!
Can't get the license to release it. Wow. So Dred Zeppelin would not happen today because of cell phone, because of Napster, because of the internet. There's no way a band like that would get a deal.
Right.
Because I can go into that about how you could consider it a tribute band, but in the industry we were always considered an original band. We never played tribute shows. We always played original shows, and tribute bands don't get record deals. We got a record deal because it was more of a mashup band.
Right.
3 elements and throwing them all together, and when you listen to it as a full concept, you're hearing like, oh yeah, that riff and that shouldn't go there, and just like a Beastie Boys record or something, just crazy stuff.
Like Steel Panther does with the '80s stuff, right? They kind of they take elements and they mishmash.
They're kind of like a Spinal Tap to me. That's real. I mean, actually, Spinal Tap, I love their songs. They write great songs. If you really listen to them, it's brilliant. Especially their second album, Break Like the Wind, with Dweezil and Jeff Beck, Satriani's on it. All these different people playing guitar on it. But Steel Panther's writing original songs,
right?
And they're good. And they're trying to do that. Like, okay, we're going to shred a little bit, but not too much, because we want you to, we don't want the girls to tune out. We're all about that whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. They're and you know what, to be in a band like that, it's hard to follow a band like that. Even a band like Dred Zeppelin, because you got nothing to lose and you're out there just cranking. The band was good. And Steel Panther's good. So when anybody who just wanted to hear a good band lay it down, even if you didn't like the music, well, fuck, they're playing great. They're tight, and they're like that. And so it's a cool place to be in a band like that.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I think
Halen, but
right. I think one of the things
they have of course they have albums out. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about Steel Panther back in the beginning of this, when I first saw them I saw them at a NAMM show at the House of Blues in Anaheim. I just noticed how much they carried the vibe and what became kind of a parody, not a parody, but a loose interpretation of the 80s. They kind of grabbed it back and said, this is what it really was. There was this technical element of the Van Halen thing,
or Whitesnake, or
showmanship. And it was good playing too. It wasn't just show. Delivered
well, yeah. And he had the raw swagger. In Atomic Punks, he was trying to be Dave. I mean, he looked like him, and he said the same things. But then he totally came into his own. And I don't think of that way at all. He's an original singer, but he has that confidence and that swagger, and he talks to the people, and but they have a sense of humor. Dred Zeppelin was a sense of humor, and it was fun. But there was some shredding going on. Steel Panther, I'm not comparing ourselves to Steel Panther, but the same kind of ballpark.
Well, that's where you get the kind of the Van Halen thing that happened. It's like they kind of brought on this thing. I mean, there was always entertainment and showmanship way back. You know, you could talk about any genre that had
Yep.
temptations if you want. You know, there. But I think what Van Halen did is they took some of that old school. You know, Roth was into that old school thing. He was into
Oh,
that,
yeah.
right? So he grabbed that best of entertainment piece and dropped it into a rock band, and then you have this thing that turns into the '80s.
Big Bad Bill is Sweet William now.
I mean, what?
Right. Who's gonna Happy Day, Happy Trails? Whose idea was that? But they sang it. They did it.
It showed their range. It showed their range, you know, as singers and players and a complete band, you know.
Yeah, that's my favorite band probably all the time is Queen, and they're like that too. There's so many aspects to their like the bass player wrote a song, and then they're all chiming in that, but they always had this democracy where whoever wrote the song kind of got the final say on it. So maybe Dave, I mean, I don't know if they just needed it. We got to fill out the album; it's too short, and they came up with that. Or if they had it, I never heard them sing it live. No, they would sing. Would they sing Happy? Not early on.
They did Happy Trails at the end sometimes.
I think they actually did play that live on, you know, because they could sing. And that's another thing. They had good harmonies.
Yeah.
You never think of Ed as a singer. You think of Mike as a singer. You can hear his voice, that high harmony, the car horn. Yeah. But Ed was in there too. He was.
Well, they had a great blend. You know, that was the thing. They had
Way to feel your love, all that stuff. It sounded great.
It's like the Beatles. It's like McCartney and Lennon. Whether they're singing harmony or unison together, they had that weird thing where they could sing unison together and sound really good. You know.
Yeah. And a band like Queen, I've seen them every time they came to LA, and it would just be the three guys singing: the drummer Brian May and Freddie, Roger Taylor and Freddie. But you know, on recording, there's 30 tracks of vocals. You know, double harmony. But you didn't miss it because they made it for the power and the live and the lights, and it sounded full. And they never sounded, when he took a solo, just like Van Halen, when he took a solo, you never missed the rhythm guitar. And that was an interesting thing. On the first album, there's a couple tracks that have rhythm guitar behind it. Mm-hmm. Feel Your Love Tonight's one of them. Mm-hmm. Why? I wonder why they decided in those songs to put rhythm, because the other ones are just power trio when he takes the lead. I wonder what informed that. Did somebody say, it sounds empty, or why don't you try something different, put a rhythm guitar under it? And did he put the rhythm guitar after the lead? Did he do it all live and then or did he play all rhythm and then do the lead? I think he probably put the rhythm on after, because he's in the moment, improvisational player, spontaneous. He probably did the solo.
He's an improv. He's an improv. He's an improv guy. You know, this goes back to where you were talking about in the clubs. Okay,
the jammer.
He was a jammer, right? Back in the clubs. So when you watched him play solos back in the early days, he was probably always improvising through there, right?
He never, ever, and I don't either, play anything like the record. If you want to hear the record solo note for note, listen to the record. But when you see a guy play live, I mean, somebody told me you never really know what a guy plays like until you hear his original music. So all the times they were playing cover tunes, he was probably overplaying that more than he does with his own music, unless they stretched out. You know, sometimes they'd go longer in a song, and he'd play like double the solo time, but usually not. It pretty much, as I remember, it'd be pretty much like the record. Mm-hmm. But when cover tunes, they'd be playing like a Foghat song or something like that, and he would just go off, you know, and that's what he felt like, or that's how he plays.
Well, it's probably like when you guys, you know, it's probably like when you get to play together so much, like, you know, my band does and your band did. Is you get to a point where you just know you can cue each other just random.
Just look at, like, you know, okay, I'm
going here, just hang on.
Or we're gonna.
You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a like a synergy thing. Yeah, because the guys in this band I played with off and on since I was 19. Right. Which brings me to a great story. Okay, so Gary Putman from Dred Zeppelin. Now this is 80. When did OU 812 come out?
Came out in 80. Let's see, 88.
Okay, so Gary calls me one day. We're both in Pasadena. He goes, Van Halen's rehearsing out in North Hollywood. Let's go. I go, let's go. I go, can we? Okay, yeah. He goes, I just want to stand outside and hear him. He's a hardcore fan. I mean, he's seen him rehearse when Ed was using a blue face bassman into a Marshall cabinet, and he had a wah-wah pedal. This is way back. I never heard him use a wah. Anyway, until recently. So anyway, I go, okay. So he picks me up. We drive out to Mates, which is right down the street from YGD.
Right.
YGD, Energy Recorders across the street, Andy Brower. And then there's this studio called Mates, which is nicer than the one that has the stage, the Dabber Down stage. It's just a cement building, kind of tan color, and you drive down an alley and park in the back, and there's a door on the side, no door in the front. And I hear they had like 2 or 3 studios there, I'm not sure. So we pull up and park, we walk up, and there's the door. And so we don't really hear anything. We're hearing like a snare drum, way in the kind of in the distance. And we're like, well, so I'm going, fuck this. I said, I'm just going to walk in. He goes, what do you mean? He's a little skittish. He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, if they kick us out, we're already out here. What's the difference? I'm just going to walk in and see what happens. He goes, oh, okay. So he's behind me, like a ghost story. So I open the door. As soon as I open the door, Sammy Hager's standing there talking to some guy. And they look over at me, and then they look this way. And we look kind of rock and roll, you know. So I just said, just act like you belong here, you know. Just so as soon as that happened, I go, we're in. So we're in like a kitchen area. There's like a hot plate and a refrigerator, and they're on a break. So Gary knows these guys probably better than me. I mean, as far as like, well, so we walk through this, like, there's like this hallway that goes into where the bands are playing. So right when we hit the hallway, Alex walks down and he goes, Putman, to Gary.
Yeah.
And then he, come on back. Ed's back here. And so we walk back there, and then it's this pretty good size, like a big stage. And like you'd rehearse the lights and everything.
Right.
And we walk back there, and Mike's on stage and Ed's on stage. And they both go, hey, Gary. And then so he's waving to them and stuff. And the only other person there was Eric Martin, who's the singer for Mr. Big. Yeah, right. He didn't say a word. They didn't interact with him. He was just there. And okay, you know, he's kind of over there sitting down. So the rest of the guys get up there, and they played Black and Blue. And then they played How Do I Know That's Love? How do I know? Was that on that album? It's one of the more ballady.
Yeah, it's on A1 too. Yeah.
Yeah. They played that.
Yep.
And so they're and I remember Mike goes, hey Gary, look, and he held up a bass, and he had a switch or something in it, and he clicked it, and like he could break the bass, but he's not really broken. It was fabricated that way. Oh, wow. Like for a stage. Because they're rehearsing for Monsters of Rock, the thing with Metallica, Doc, and all that. This was the rehearsal for that. So they're done, and so we walk up there and to say hi to, and Mike was friendly, and he was doing something. And so Ed starts talking to us, and he's got 3 black like JCM 900 cabs. He was doing the stereo thing, and he had the rack with the harmonizer and stuff. And I had a Vox shirt on, Vox amp shirt.
Yeah. And
he goes, Vox, and I said, you had a Vox amp, remember that? He goes, yeah, I had the AC50. He goes, I still got it. He goes, I haven't played it for a while, and all that stuff. And then I said, well, I know you played in Starfleet at Brian May. He goes, I said, you played Brian May's guitar? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I go, what's that like? He goes, the pickups are like really weak, you know, they're not high output. I go, like a Dan Electro pickup? He goes, yeah, like a Dan Electro. He was, well, we at this point, when we walked in, they said, you know, you guys want something to drink? There's a refrigerator over there. And they looked at me and they go, but there's no alcohol in it. And so he wasn't drinking. He was drinking Jolt Cola, you know, twice sugar. So he was really up and in a good space, you know, and not that I'm judging that, you know, whatever. So he says, yeah, kind of like a Dan Electric pickup. And then he hands me his guitar. And then he goes, hey, Jake or Zeke or somebody, he goes, turn on my stuff. So I'm holding the Frankenstein guitar. This is before the Music Man and all that. And I'm holding it, and I'm thinking like, I call the story so close but so far. I'm thinking like, I'm going to hit a big power A chord through this rig. I'm going to hear if it's treblier than I thought, cleaner than I thought. I'm just going to hit a chord. I'm not going to try to play any lead or anything. So the guy's like, looks at the roadie looks at us like, who the fuck are these clowns? You know, I want to go home. You know, anyway, so he turns the stuff on, and I go to hit a chord, and the D string pops from the bridge. Goes cling. But he's on the deck, right? but then but then Ed goes, "Oh man!" And then this guy comes over and just kind of grabs the guitar from me because now he's got to change the string, right?
Right.
And it's so close but so far. It didn't happen. So then we talked a little more, and then we split.
Wow.
And they played at the Coliseum. A friend of mine went and said they were great. But
yeah, I saw that tour. That would have been the 5150 you had in your hands, right?
it was the Frankenstein red, black, and white with the reflectors.
That was the original.
Yeah, 150. I think it's the one they replicated that the guy did from photos. You hear about that?
Yeah, I knew that was later on, but this is 88, you said.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I remember in one of his painted Strats. It was definitely a Strat. It wasn't, but he had a bunch of them.
yeah, he had a number of those 5150.
It was a case with a bunch of guitars. Like there was like 6 guitars in it that all looked kind of the same.
Yeah, he had a number of like versions that they.
A guitar, but it was definitely a Strat that was painted. It wasn't the Music Man. It wasn't the Wolfgang. It was way before that.
Yeah, he had a few then at that point.
So I used jammed the whole time and it was fine. I touched the guitar and the thing pops up from the lock nut on the pincher on the bridge. You know,
just like that time you were playing with the strings and he was like, "No."
Yeah, and I don't overbend really, and I just goes, whoa. He goes, I just put those on. I go, I'm in no danger of breaking a string in this guitar. It's like you're going to wrangle this thing in a minute, you know. but maybe you remember me from the, you know, I mean, it was never like, hey, you're Carl, you know. It was just like he would just come up and say and just start talking like we don't even have to say that. I know you are. Not that I'm saying he knew who I was, but he's seen me play guitar in backyards, you know, with bands that weren't as good as them, but we're different. Not as good, different,
right?
But
well, that's cool. 88. You know that would have been Zeke, I think. Zeke Clark, not Rudy. Rudy was
kind of guy. He looked kind of like Dave Manichetti from Y&T. You know who that is?
Zeke Clark.
Yeah. He looked at us like, well, no, I want to go home and have all right.
Yeah, Zeke Clark.
Well, you're not gonna. Your boss tells you to turn it on. Turn it on. Yeah.
Zeke he's in Nashville now.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't connected with him, but I do have friends that are good friends with him.
Yeah, he was his right-hand guy for a while, I think.
Yeah, him and like Rudy started that first part of his career, and then of course Zeke took over, you know, all the way for a while. I mean, until.
And who's Matt Bruck?
Matt was Eddie's personal assistant. Now the kind of the
He wasn't a tech for Ed.
He was at one time.
Okay, I thought he was too. I know his name too.
Yeah, Matt was later. I want to say late 90s maybe. He came into the picture or mid 90s maybe. I don't know if it was 95 or not, but I could check around. But yeah, Matt's been with him for a long time, or was with him for a long time, and now he's kind of Wolfgang's right hand for the EVH Corp.
Who's a great musician too. I mean, he definitely got the enough of the yoke of that whole thing.
Yeah,
he's great. I like his record.
I've seen him 4 times and live, and he's getting tighter every time.
Wow, that's great.
Vocals are really incredible. You know, people didn't think he was singing on that 07 tour or 08 tour, but I went to the sound check, one of those shows, and Whoopi sang lead at the sound check, and he was 17.
Wow.
And I was like, this kid can sing
parts. Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually singing the lead. I think it was Al Waite he was singing.
Oh, really? Like Sammy's parts. Wow.
Yeah. Well, this is when he was back. They were back with Dave, 07, 08.
But wait, was a Roth song. What am I thinking of?
Yeah, probably.
Wait, yeah. On what was that on? That was on 84. Yeah. So that's a great song.
Going back to your
Dave's parts.
Going back to your impressions of the tours that did you see him on tour in 78? You said you saw him at that Long Beach Arena thing.
No, I didn't see him there. I was mad that I didn't find out about it.
Okay.
I just heard the story about him going to his van. Did you order pizza?
I should have.
If it's paid for it, I'll accept it.
Right.
That's good. No, I didn't go to the Long Beach Arena one, and I'm trying to figure out if that was before or after the Black Sabbath thing. I want to say it's after because that really made them get a lot of notoriety too. There's a photo of Ed and Brian May and Tony Iommi standing together having a glass of wine.
Yeah, I've seen.
They are great friends, and I just wonder what they're thinking. You know, like shit, who's this hot shot here over here? Because they must have just burned the house down.
Well,
I mean, I love Black Sabbath, but they're more of an old school stand in place and just crank it out, the heavy riffs. But this is like turn it up to 78 on the turntable, man. It was like,
yeah. Well, Ross Halfin, who took that picture, he did a video where he said that he was trying to get Eddie out of the picture. He's like, "Who's this kid? He's hanging around. Get out of the
way." We met Ross Halfin once and took some photos with him. Me and Joe. Anyway, it's another story. But yeah, and about this new. Yeah, well, yeah, you're gonna want to crop the other guys out, maybe. But it's a great photo. They're just standing there. Look, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and hear what they're talking about. You know,
right? I'd like to see the video. Neil Slozauer, of course. Do you know Neil?
I don't know him. I know people that know him, though. But he's a photographer. He's got a lot of experience doing. He's on everybody too.
Yeah, amazing. I got to go to his studio last time I was in town, and we hung out for a little bit. So.
Did you go to Ross Halfin's studio?
I didn't. I only went to Neil's.
I mean, I just wondered if it's still there. It was in Yucca, up in Hollywood, on Yucca, like in between Vine and Highland, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know.
Above like the Hollywood Palace, where that is, you wouldn't even know it was a studio. It was just like this building, and you walked in and it was all, he had all the lights and everything.
Yeah, I've not had a chance to get with Ross Halfin. I want to get with anybody that was there that can tell some crazy stories like you have today.
Well, let me tell you this Ross Halfin story real quick. It's not a Van Halen story, but Red Zeppelin was playing at the Palomino, which is a club up in North Hollywood, normally known as a cowboy kind of bar, but they have all kinds of music. And the thing was, they didn't have an age limit, so kids could get in there and see the band. So we always had good shows there. So one time, Joe Ramsey, the one who ran the Marquee Western I was telling you about, he who knew Mike pretty well too. He knew this girl, and this girl shows up with this guy, and she goes, "This is my friend Ross Halfin." And we go, "Oh, he's a photographer." We go, "Oh, cool." So anyway, they see the band, and then he comes up to me and Joe. He goes, "I'd like to do a photo session with just you and with just the two guitar players." And we're like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So we go to this building. We walk in. Looks like this, like we're gonna get murdered. We walk in, and they had all the lights and everything. So Joe and I just did this, like with our guitars, just did this photo shoot. I have a couple stills from it, or Polaroids from it, but I don't know what happened to the photos. But while we're there, Joe, in his way, gives him a 45 that we produced. We didn't have an album out yet. 45 that we did ourselves, and a shirt. And the shirt is the famous shirt. It has Elvis shaking hands with Bob Marley. Basically, it was Elvis with Nixon, but they put Bob Marley's head, and then the Hindenburg behind blown up. So all three, Elvis, Reggae, Zeppelin. And Ross Halfin goes, "I'm going to be in England next month shooting Robert Plant for a cover of Kerrang magazine." So Joe says, "Well, here's another one. Give it to him." So he goes, So Joe, he goes, "I'll give it to him." So anyway, 6 months later, Kerrang, which is a British metal magazine, comes out. Robert Plant's on the cover. Why I Dread Zeppelin. Because he was kind of like having trouble with Robert Page, and they were trying to get back together. And he was doing some stuff. Anyway, he said I gave it to him. He immediately tore his shirt off and put it on and said, "Let's go." So he's on the cover of Kerrang wearing the shirt. That's how that happened. But Joe brought a shirt to give it to him. I mean, how many? He's thinking all the time. Promotion.
You never know, right? You never know.
You never know. But anyway, I don't know those photos, but he had a book. Actually, Ross Halfin had a book called Power Age, and it was a book of all kinds of black and white photos. And Van Halen's on the cover pointing, and he's got the black and white early striped shirt with the Fender trim, and the one, it must have been the first one with the crappy pickguard, and he's pointing to the camera, and it's a great photo. It's called Power Age by Ross Halfin. It must have came out in the 80s. It was a book of just black and white photos, and it had like Phil Collins when he was in Girl and all this good stuff. And I was doing a guitar show. Greg Lillian we used to rent tables at a guitar show, independent little guitar show up in North Hollywood. And I had the book there for sale, and Phil Lewis, the singer for LA Guns, was walking by, but he was going through a phase where he wasn't doing that. He was like in a suit. He looked like really like Duran Duran or something. And he goes, "I'm in that book." And I go, "Really?" And he showed me the photo, and I go, "Do you have it?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Take it, man." So I gave him the book. but it had all those early Maiden, all like black and white photos. It's a great book. I've never seen it.
You just mentioned Phil Lewis because I just ran
across. I don't know, but I just met him there, and he said he's in the book, and I said, well, here. But anyway.
You said L.A. Guns, right?
Yeah. He's a singer he was the original singer. I don't know if he's still in the band.
So here's a story. This is a good story because it goes with the Randy Rhoads thing. And
okay.
And at some point I want to get this guy on to talk about it. But apparently this is what you were saying now. The reason I'm saying is because all the things you've said. He's in the audience seeing Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads.
Who's this now? Who is this?
Phil Lewis.
Phil Lewis.
Okay. Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this was it because I got sent it by Greg Renoff and I read it. Anyway,
that's probably true.
So anyway, they're in the audience. I forget if it was the Whiskey, but it was a club, and Eddie's there with Phil, and they're watching Randy Rhoads, and Phil goes, "What do you think, Eddie, of Randy?" And it was the same thing. The same response you've been saying the whole time.
Richie Blackmore. Yeah, just kind of. I was listening. I heard. Was it Tad who talked about Phil Weissman? No, Phil. I think his last name at the owner of the Wood Sound.
Yeah.
Greg Leon.
Yeah, Greg. Yeah.
I've seen Ed and Roth go into that office, and what it was Phil had a mirror that was the size of maybe a placemat. It had the United States on it, a map of the United States, and so you draw your lines and say, well, let's go to Chicago, L.A. to Chicago. You want to go to Portland, L.A. to Portland. So how big do you want the line to be? Oh, I'm just going to go to Phoenix today. All right, L.A. to Phoenix. So they would go. So if you went to New York, that's a long answer. 4 people did that. Yeah, that was the lure of that whole thing. Yeah, he was a great guy. That was a great club too. That was after the Marquee West because the Cyclones played Marquee West. Then we had a band called the Item, same guys, Joe, me, and we played at the Wood Sound, and we saw Storm with Bates there. Oh, Jimmy Bates, you were asking about.
Tell me about Jimmy Bates, man, because this is something that people relate to me like a Sean Lane of that time. Would you say that?
I don't know much about Sean Lane's playing, but Bates was he was definitely a progressive rock guitarist in kind of in the vein of an Eddie, but he was informed by classical music and Richie Blackmore and people like that. So but more than his playing was his sound. Now you're a guitar player. When I say a heavy guitar sound, this sound was beyond. Heavy guitar sounds like. Think of the big power chords in Boston's Long Time. At the very end where it goes gung gung gung. It's like a machine's turned on, like somebody at a nuclear reactor hit a machine and it went, and it's just this powerful. He played lefty, humbucking pickup. He had some Strats. He had the Megazones. He had a couple Megazones. He had an endorsement with Mighty Mike, who made the Megazone, and he's in the catalog. But here's how he got his tone. He had Marshall cabinets. He had one cabinet that had 6 10-inch speakers in it in a circle, like a gun barrel. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one in the middle. Somebody made a baffle that held 6 10s in a case. But anyway, so he'd have like a JMP 100 watt, like a rocker switch, master volume JMP, and he would the preamp volume was on 1, and he had Eddie had the Univox.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say, right? You don't know what I'm going to say.
No.
All right. The Univox made a series of things like that. So they had the cassette echo, but they made a graphic EQ. Okay. Same box, but I think it was 7-band, all of them cranked to the top. So he was driving all this EQ, not distortion pedal, but just tone into this head. So if you turned it past 2, you couldn't stand it. But it was this grainy, thick, he could hit a chord and it would just last the whole verse. It was crazy. But he knew how to play with it. Never had a clean sound, never turned down. That's what Van Halen, the up and down thing, didn't do that. Yeah, I saw them play. So the original band was with Steve Hall on drums, Ballsy Halsey. He's still around. Mm-hmm. Jerry Masana on bass, Jimmy on guitar, and then Randy Jones, who was in Sky People earlier, was a singer. And then later they got a guy named Russ Hardy. And then the band changed. Donnie Simmons was a Stormer later, but the Bates era was great. And Jimmy kind of took me in his wing a little bit. I went to his house. He lived in Laverne. He had a small daughter, and he gave me a Firebird body, and he gave me some necks, and he played me a bunch of music. Gave me a Stormer cassette I still have. We'll talk about that later, and you can hear the tone. And then I lost touch with him. He stopped playing, and years later, I saw him at a pub in Pasadena called the John Bull Pub, and he lost a lot of weight. He was kind of a big guy, and he was working at a place called Cycle Rider, right down the street from Pasadena City College, on the same side of the street, going towards Arcadia. And I went in there and talked to him one day, and then he still kept his Explorer. He had a custom-made Explorer somebody made for him. He was a lefty, and he had a small Ampeg amp. And he says, I still jam something. He goes, I'm not really playing in bands. And then I lost touch with him. And then 10 years ago, maybe, I heard his daughter through Timmy Gaines, who played bass in Stormer, who was in Stryper. He's a friend of mine. So somebody that he passed away. So I don't know what happened or how healthy he was or whatever, but he was a great guy. Yeah. And I never played with him, but to me, he was always just a total nice guy.
EQ, that's, boost, right? So this is like,
but all the bands flush.
Using it as a mega boost in the front.
Gain, man. I mean, so you couldn't, rather than turn the preamp to 8 and then just kind of, ease into it now, all the way up. I don't know how we discovered that, but it was, yeah. And Van Halen used to never use an EQ, but at Walter Mitty's, when you went to Walter Mitty's, you walk in and the bar's here, there's a dance floor, and there's like a little corral. Like it was about, seriously, like up to your waist, like a gate, like in a backyard. And the band was in this little corral, so people could walk on 3 sides of it. There's a wall behind you. And I remember walking next to Eddie, standing right there, and I looked down, and he had a blue MXR 10 band, phase 90, flanger, no wah, the delay, but again, no bomb, Echoplex. Right. And he had a 10 band with just a couple of the things either boosted or cut in the middle, just to get a little, I hope not more treble, but to or notch something out. But it wasn't, most of the bands weren't moved. Right. And the boost band that didn't have a boost band. The Boss one did. I had that same Boss GE10, AC powered EQ. And these weren't AC powered pedals. You had to use a battery. Right. And no pilot light, but there's that Day in the Green photo where they're playing and you could see the 10 band. Yeah. That was a good EQ. That's going up in price too. Those are expensive. The big one now. The big AC powered Boss GE10, I think it was called. It was 10 band. And it had, that was 10 band, but it had a level on it. Yeah. So you could boost a band and then boost the volume of that, or cut it.
My buddies who built this amp for me. My buddy Colin, he's friends with Greg. Greg turned me on to this kid. He's like 20, and he's like a Van Halen freak. Oh,
I saw that. And you was Tad standing there jamming? Yeah. That kid with blonde hair? Yeah. What's his story? How does he know all about this stuff?
Dude, he's just like, his dad was a player, and his dad introduced him to Van Halen, and he saw, just get this, his first Van Halen show ever was 2015, the last show.
My friend saw that show in Paso Robles at like some kind of a big fair thing they were having up there, and he went and saw them. Tom Allen, yeah, he saw them up there.
He had that 10 band. He had a 10 band on the floor, and we were boosting that White Marshall. The reason this White Marshall is a thing is, inside of the head, it's signed by Eddie Van Halen, and there's a story that goes behind it that leads with the recycler. Apparently, it's in the recycler. A guy doesn't know it's Eddie Van Halen. He goes to the Lost Luna's house, and they do this deal. And this is supposedly the story behind this White Marshall. But this White Marshall is like, who knows? That all that stuff that went back and forth between those guys with Chris Holmes, and I've heard Chris Holmes had a pile of stuff.
I bet you Terry Kilgore would know. I bet you'd know all about that. I never saw Ed with the white hat, but I saw that photo with it up there. Yeah, I'm sure it's
wild though, because the signature,
is it dated? Did he date the signature?
It did date it, but it's not. It doesn't match the signature, and that's my thing. Even though the signature looks right.
Oh, somebody else did.
The signature looks right.
It's funny about getting now. What do you think about this?
Yeah,
I have Billy Gibbons's book called Rock and Roll Gearhead. Came out in 2005. My wife gave it to me.
Yeah.
So I live in Dahlonega, Georgia. I'm about an hour north of Atlanta, but above me is Hiawassee, Georgia, and ZZ Top came to play there. This is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because this guy I play with, the drummer, knew the opening band, and Billy Gibbons has a band with this guy. They do some kind of baritone. I forget the name of it.
Austin Hanks, Stephen Hanks.
My friend used to play in a Billy Joel kind of band in Hollywood at a wine bar, and he was the bartender.
Well, you know what? Stephen Hanks is from Birmingham.
Get out of here.
No.
Well, he moved to L.A. This guy was in L.A. Anyway, so his band, Austin Hanks, they had like a Tom Petty kind of band. They opened up.
Yeah.
And then Top played. So we had passes. So we're there. And I walk up to Billy Gibbons, and I held the book up because it was like a meet and greet. It was like $300 to get a photo taken with him. But anyway, I just walk up and I pointed the book. He goes, "Come here." So I walk over and he signs. I had a little Sharpie. He goes, "Well, I can do better than that." And he pulls out a big Sharpie and we're talking. So he signs the book. And then he writes 2017. And I thought, that was interesting. Why would is he afraid that I don't want you to think that I signed the book in 2005 when it came out, like it'd be a rarity or something, but he actually dated it. And that's the first time I've ever seen anybody date something. Right. It's either like you want to personalize, or an autograph's more valuable if they don't personalize it. But anyway, so he dated it, and I kind of went like, that's interesting. And then he went on the bus, and that was before Dusty passed and all that. But I think it was a small place, like maybe 1,500 people. And it might have just been like, we need a gig to join us between here and this place, just a fill in type thing. But it was packed. It was sold out.
The funny thing about Billy Gibbons, he has a connection here in Huntsville, Alabama, which is another freaky thing. But around town during the holidays, Billy Gibbons shows up in town. He eats at the Mexican restaurants here in town, and my musician friends end up playing freaking ZZ Top for him.
Oh, there's a band. They're in a band where he goes to the restaurant. There's a band.
Well, they'll be playing acoustic. It's usually an acoustic guy that's playing at these Mexican restaurants. But he's been to the Guitar Center. People have seen him around town. But his wife's family is from right here in Huntsville.
I'll be damned.
So when
he playing musicians like in Zurich or something, there's some video of like a street guy with a Strat, and he picks up the Strat, and people are walking by. It's like in France or Sweden or something. It's recent. And so he's just jamming blues, and it's like some guy playing a conga, and just like a little street band. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy like that. You just never know when that's going to happen. But yeah, I'm waiting to run into him and have a minute with him, because I do know Stephen Hanks not really well, but I grew up in the same scene with him. We were, playing opposite band. I know his bandmates better than I know him, but I knew, and I've talked to him when I've been out there in LA at the NAMM show, But yeah, he ended up doing that whole thing with Billy, and he was working at that place and all of that.
Wine bar. Yeah, my friend Jonathan Benton's the drummer, and I forget the guy's name who was the piano player, but they played there like all the time. Yeah. So he kept them. And when he goes, "Hey, my buddy, that guy who was a bartender, he's going to be playing with ZZ Top," I go, "No, shit, let's go." So we went up and saw him. It was great.
Yeah,
that was 2000. That was long.
Eric Dover, the guy that was at the party, that was a singer for Jellyfish.
Yeah.
Austin Hanks, and Damon Johnson. I don't know if you know Damon, but Damon was Alice Cooper. All those guys, same scene. I grew up with all those guys. It's my story. My story about my scene is like your story about Eddie Van Halen with these guys. These are the guys that are all around me.
Now Damon Johnson was in Brother Kane, who opened for Van Halen, didn't they? What tour was that?
95.
What album was out? Balance?
Not Balance, yeah.
Did you go to any of those shows? I'm sure you.
He played in our hometown arena, where he saw Van Halen in 1980, and his life got changed. He cried after the show because it was so awesome. And then in 1995, 15 years later, he's on the same stage opening for Van Halen.
How about that?
Yeah.
Now he must have some Eddie stories. Has he been on?
Yeah, he's been on. He's been to 5150. He toured with Eddie, and we've talked about. There was a time when he was so busy that it was really hard to get with him. But when I started this thing, he was right on board. He was the second person on.
That's awesome. Well, here's an 5150 story. I've never been to 5150, but Gary Putman, the guy he has been, because Dred Zeppelin put a couple albums out, and then we did another album, and we needed a bass player because Gary became the lead singer. and we did the entire Saturday Night Fever album, reggae, disco, Zeppelin. So we needed a bass player, and Gary was really good friends with a guy named Steve Krashiznik, who was in Private Life, and Eddie produced their records.
That's right.
So Steve goes, well, I'm going to be doing bass tracks up at 5150. So Gary has a photo of him and Steve with Eddie and Alex, and Eddie signed he has a Music Master, a vintage Music Master guitar that's just beat to hell. He's got David Crosby on it. He's got Eddie Van Halen on it, and he's got somebody. It's like his autograph guitar, but now he just got the body. And so Eddie signed it, and they went up there, and he goes, I was at 5150. They did 2 albums. They had a girl singer, kind of like a heart band, and Danny Johnson was a guitar player.
Yeah,
Danny Johnson with Axis and Derringer.
This would have been late 80s or mid 80s, because I just saw a photo of this and I put it up on my Instagram. I have an Instagram, Forever Unchained 1981. And on that Instagram, it was St. Patrick's Day. And there was a video or a photo of Eddie playing with Private Life on St. Patrick's Day somewhere.
Wow.
Somewhere in a club in LA. Yeah.
He was really behind that band. They kind of just, I couldn't tell you their sound in my head. I think I heard the first album, but nothing really happened. But they didn't open for Van Halen, did they?
I don't think so, no.
I mean, he's involved. You think he could got him on the bill, I'm sure, if he wanted to. But
yeah, I don't know what happened with that, why it went south. It's crazy. Like even Gene Simmons was trying to get, Van Halen going, and then Bill Aucoin and Paul Stanley decided it wasn't a good idea for Gene to be taking off doing producing when they needed to be on tour.
Yeah, they had to go make Kiss Me the Phantom. Kind of a way you could be a movie star. We're going to do Kiss Me the Phantom.
We got to do that. We got to do The Elder tomorrow.
Got it. Here's another Ed story. Did you know about his car?
Yeah, which one?
The Volvo.
Okay, no.
Leon said it was a Peugeot. He had a white Volvo, which is kind of like a Volkswagen, but it has kind of a beak from the front. Mm-hmm. And he totally ripped the back seats out. You just see the bare metal, and the trunk. He busted out the back so he could slide. He could carry a stack in it. Basically, he could slide his one cabinet here, one cabinet where the back seat would have been, and put his head in there. And Gazzari's, where they played. When you're driving down Sunset Strip, you see the banner for Gazzari's, or the bands are playing, but then the entrance is here. There's like a little parking lot. Somebody had taken a photo of Gazzari's that way and painted a mural on the side of the whole side of the wall of that photo. So basically, it's a photo of what you're looking at. And Ed's car was parked in the street, so his car was in the mural forever until the Key Club over or Billboard Live. And then they changed everything. But there was a big mural on the side of Gazzari's that was a photo of Gazzari's. You know what I'm saying? Like if I looked at a guitar and painted a mural of me looking at the guitar,
yeah,
it's looking at the guitar, but it's now painting. I mean, it was painted on the thing you're looking at.
Okay.
Right. So the bands that were coming were up there like a movie theater, they changed the letters. But behind that was this mural of that photo, but Ed's car was in the front, so it made it into the mural. So his car was immortalized on the side of the wall forever. He just happened to park there, probably inside sound checking or something, or playing. It was during the day. But anyway, yeah.
So this is on the side. This is the side of the building.
Yeah, if you look at Gazzari's from Sunset Strip,
yeah.
There's the walk up, but the side is you could come out there. There's like a little parking lot there for like the employees. And the side of it this way, if you're looking at the front, you couldn't see the marquee. It had to go on the side. Like if you walked out the Rainbow and took a right and look, you'd see it right there. Right. And then it was like a movie marquee, but somebody painted a mural behind it of Gazzari, of that same thing.
I'll have to check that out, because they're probably
a photo. Right, but anyway, Ed's car was in the Volvo was in the.
Well, that answered my question about the Volvo, because there was one.
He had a Volvo. Yeah.
There was one story that the doors were nearly falling off and he just bail wired it together. like he had like little bailing wire on it.
Somebody said some girl was saying, some story was like Dave Roth was with a girl in the car and his window was broken and it was freezing out. And she goes, why don't you get this window fixed? It's freezing. He goes, well, look at the bright side. Summer's coming. It's gonna get warmer. I'm not going to fix it. It's going to get warmer.
Yeah, I was wondering how he got, because I was always reading these things about him driving that car to gigs, and he'd have all this equipment. I'm like, where's the equipment coming from?
Car. Yeah, just take the seats out. He might have taken the passenger seat out too. I don't know. But I remember looking in there and saying, like, damn. Because, I mean, how are you going to get your gear in there? And I don't know where we were, someplace. I think at the casino club when they played there. Not the casino club. I saw them play at the Golden West Ballroom.
Yeah.
And they, not with UFO and not with the Ramones before that. They played with, like, they might have been playing with Rusty Anderson's band, Eulogy, or we used to see Wolfgang all the time out there. They turned into Autograph.
Right.
They were like a real band too. Like I told you about Alan Hornato, about like I got a truck. I own the truck. I'm not renting it, and I'm going to load the gear in. They had like a full on like kind of band that would drive to Kansas and play a gig, and drive to, you know, just like they had a sign that was lit up and professional. And I think just the bass player and him were the only guys that made it to Autograph. I don't know who the guitar player was, but it wasn't Steve.
Steve Lynch.
Wasn't Steve Lynch. It was Steve Plunkett, and they call him Chief, I think, was the bass player. And they were good to watch. They were entertaining. Sometimes they'd sit down and play acoustic guitar in the middle of a set and do like a ballad, and then they'd rock again, and they had an organ player, and, you know, they were all white jumpsuits and, you know, kind of.
There was a thing back then, you know, even on the East Coast and the South, where we had regional touring bands. You know, we had like bands that would go. They would go
like,
like
Head East or something would just play in a one area, or REO Speedwagon, and then they break out.
Right, pretty much that kind of regional touring that would go on back in the 70s and 80s, that you would see, you know, a band do. They might go 11 hours away, but
I don't know what their touring schedule was like, if they even left the state, but it's like they were thinking that way, you know, like, we're for life. We don't work day gigs. We're going to just go, you know.
Volvo, you know, you were talking about the Volvo.
Yeah.
There's a picture in Zlozauer's book of Dave jumping off the Volvo that was taken on that photo session. You just see the back of it. It's a pretty good photo, though, of it. And you can really see it. It's pretty wild. So tell me about this. You know, I've been hanging out and talking to Nicky Panisi a good bit. Do you know Nicky?
I don't know him. I know who he is because of Rusty Anderson. I mean, he was a guitar guy, like wheeling and dealing vintage guitars and stuff. Never really come in contact with him. I see him. He's on Facebook, I think.
Yeah, when I went out there, he met up with me and took me to lunch. Do you know where he took me to?
Hold on, the Rainbow.
No, it's Pasadena.
Oh,
and it's still there. It's an icon in that area.
Not Hutch's Barbecue. That's closed.
No.
A log cabin. What is it? What is it?
Northwoods.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that's a nice restaurant.
It isn't.
Go to the boat. The boat's just like a burger place, but inside Northwoods Inn with the sawdust on the floors.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Dave there eat one time. He was just by himself and just kind of didn't want to be disturbed. He was reading a long time ago, but I didn't know they went there. That's a great place.
Yeah, Michael apparently took his dad there for one of his later birthdays.
Mike used to always go to King Arthur's Pizza, which is over in Arcadia, and there was a guitar store called Guitar Corner that used to be in a little shopping mall. And Mike would always he would frequent there a lot. His family.
What do you know about Mike's brothers and his brothers? You know, because there's some talk about his brothers having bands. There's connections all over the place with his brother and him and Mike.
Well, Dennis was a bass player, and they played at Pookie's. They were called Rampage. Mm-hmm. Chris Moore was the drummer. Dennis was the bass player, and they played original rock, original music. And then later on, John Gadesi and I kind of were in a recording studio together, and he knew Dennis real well because they're younger than me. And all these guys were in this band called the Insulters. Pete Corona, Tommy Montez. These guys were like local Arcadia. They're in that kind of skateboarder kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But they play so they do all songs about Arcadia. Denny's, Sweet Home of Santa Anita, just raw song, but they're just kind of basic rock songs. Mike actually got up and jammed with us one time. We played Sweet Home Alabama together. They would rent out a strip bar. It was called Pleasures in Pasadena. And they play one gig a year. And it was always around Christmas time, last show ever. And Dennis was the bass player. So I played with him. So anyway, John recorded their album. And because of meeting them, they said, well, why don't you play with us? So they already had two, Sin Kernan, who plays with Ministry, and My Life at the Thrill Kill Call. He plays with all these Lords of Acid. He was a guitar player too. So I'd go up and be the main guitar player. Then Sam would come play a song, and we all use the same amp. I had like an Engel amp with a Sound City cabinet. We just plug into that, and then and it was crazy. He'd light off Piccolo Pete's, and he'd spray the crowd, and it was all these. It was like a big high school reunion for this class of people. So there would be 300 people there, and it would be crazy. And Dennis was the bass player for that, so I got to know him well. And Mike would come with Kevin Dugan, and they'd be back and just hanging out. And then one time, Mike actually came up and played with us, and it was fun. It was I got a photo of that, him up on stage with us. And yeah, he's looking at me going, "What are the chords?" I go, D, A, G. He goes, "Got it." I go, "Sweet Home Alabama."
Right, that's a while.
No, DCG. Yeah, this was like 2000, 2001. 99. Yeah, so I did it every year for like 5 years, and every year I would make a guitar. I'd get a body and a neck, just something to get me through the night. Hondo Les Paul custom, and just write stuff on it. And at the end of the night, I'd have everybody who was there sign it, and I'd give it to the singer. He doesn't play guitar, but so he probably has like 6 guitars at home. Wow. Different salters.
That's cool though, man. That's cool.
That
you guys did that. Yeah, Michael. I've met Michael a few times.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, Damon knows Michael pretty well because of the tour they did together, and I always found him to be super
mellow, just
easy. Yeah. I mean, such an easy guy to talk to and hang out with.
Dennis is too. Dennis is cool, and then Bob Sobolewski. There's Dennis is the youngest, then Bob, then Steve, was a hair cutter. I think he's passed away now, okay. And then Mike. Then there's a sister, I think. But Bob was a guitar player too. He had a band called Asylum Suite. Michael Fury was a singer, who's a big graphics guy now. Very good. John Gadesi and Mike had a band together. And he's a good singer. But Asylum Suite, Bob was the guitar player. And he was more into like Schenker and stuff. He had a V, Marshalls. Good player. I can't remember their music, but I saw him play like once, I think. Asylum Suite.
Wow. Somebody we were talking about, I think it was, I forgot who I was talking to about it, but you had the Altadena crew, and you had the Pasadena crew, the South Pasadena crew, Arcadia. I mean, how much mixing was in that?
Smile was from Temple City. That's right below. Smile was from Temple City. That's right below Arcadia.
Okay.
And then you had like the La Habra. You had the Kevin Crease from a la carte. He's a great guitar player. Somebody mentioned him. Yeah. I think Tracy G mentioned him.
Yeah.
And Rusty Anderson was from that area. Then you had the Hollywood guy, the Glendale people, like Altadena was Kilgore and all that, and God, who else? Frank Sines, he's a guitar player. It's local. Played with Don Henley. Now he's playing with Roger Daltrey. He's an Asian guy playing guitar with Roger Daltrey. Gary Putman, Frank Sines, Tommy Gervin, Bates, and Gary Putman, who played with a million people, Prime Movers, Dred Zeppelin. In Dred Zeppelin, he played bass, but then later he played guitar. And he's a guitar player now. Matter of fact, he plays every Wednesday night in Arcadia at a place called the First Cabin.
Okay.
Just a bar. Who are some of the more regional bands that played in your area that kind of didn't get out of the state but were good? Would I know any of them? Did they put any records out?
Yeah, Split the Dark was one. They were Basement Tapes winners when MTV did that.
Okay, yeah.
They did that. There's a band called Hotel that hit a pretty decent sized deal back in the day.
Were they kind of Eagles sounding?
Yeah.
I had their record, Hotel. Yeah. Like white cover and said Hotel on it. Yeah. I know who they are.
Mark Phillips was the singer in the band and was a guest on one of my podcasts before. Split the Dark had Damon in it for a while. Damon was in that band. He was brought into it.
Well, I have the Witness album.
Witness, sure.
I have that album on the motorcycle. Yeah.
Damon toured with it, but it was Neil Schon and Brad Gillis on the record.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, so Damon's not on that record.
He didn't play on it, but he was
in the band.
He was the road guy. And then he was in a band called Delta Rebels out of Memphis that was kind of like AC/DC meets Skynyrd.
Wow.
It was killer.
A lot of cowboy chords, a lot of open strings going on.
Dude, it was one of those things you walk in the room and it just blows you out of the damn room.
I know about Damon because I remember getting a vintage guitar magazine, and I think he had a band called Whiskey River, and they did an article on that band. And it was kind of short-lived. Is that in the middle?
That's the article above me.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh,
guitar.
guitar. Awesome. It's all good.
It's all good.
And I got to, I mean, come on, this is important to me. I got a nice backdrop here. Welcome to hell. And I got a clean shirt on for it.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you getting all cleaned up.
Well, I appreciate. I'm glad you're doing this thing, and thank you for including me, man. Thank you.
Sure, man. You know, Greg Renoff is a great source of the he knows about all your stories, and you know he pushes me one way and I go do that and I go this way, and I keep finding people through people like you who bring up a name that I don't know that have a great story, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and just kind of fill in the gaps, you know.
Well, it is. You know, the thing about Van Halen was that, and one of the reasons why I decided to do this thing was because, you know, they may come out with a documentary one day, but it's not going to have this stuff.
No,
it's not going to.
Then I want you. It's free. Then I want to.
Right.
Yeah, document. I mean, and you know, that's thinking about that kind of stuff. You know, I think of the Freddie Mercury concert for life. All the people came out and did that. And I guess Alex is just not really up on having some kind of tribute where people, you know, like, I don't want to play my brother's licks. Well, it's like, well, I mean, it's a tribute thing. It's like, there hasn't been any closure there or any kind of like, you know, there should be some kind of a farewell of send off. I mean, and it's not too late. You can do it anytime, you know, but I don't know. Sure. I heard some rumor about Satriani and said, well, God, you could have a bunch of different people. You don't have to have just one guy unless you just love the way he plays, you know?
Right. Well, you want to hear a bomb that I just found out today?
Drop a bomb.
There you go. All right. So my former guest, Phil X,
who I really like. He's got a sense of humor.
He's great.
He's great. He's good he's rock and roll. Yeah.
I like him. Dude. So Phil X, I found out today, is teaming up with Michael Landby.
Wow.
And the drummer that John, what's John's last name? The drum tech for Bon Jovi. You know, John Douglas. Now, John Douglas, not only was he the tech for Bon Jovi's drums, but he was also Alex Van Halen's tech.
Oh, okay.
So it's according to Michael, they're forming a new band with him and John Douglas, a trio.
Wow.
This was apparently on Eddie Trunk went yesterday.
Is Mike the singer?
I don't know whether they're going to do both or what.
Does Phil sing?
Yeah.
Oh, he does sing. Okay. I didn't know that. Oh, well, that would be awesome. See, even if you do a one-off thing, you know, like George Lynch does all those one-off. George Lynch, Michael Sweet, the guy Doug Pinnick, you know, just do a recording. I mean, so they'd write original music. I
don't know what the plan is. It doesn't look like there's a plan. It's kind of like tentative, if you will.
I'm sure Phil X has riffs.
Oh, dude, he's
sure the boy has some riffs. He could dole out and make some songs up.
He's a fantastic, you know, player, but he's also a huge Van Halen fan. When Greg had brought up about his amp being the Beat It amp, which is this big mystery.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. That's great. Real quick, I was working at a vitamin store, right, in Pasadena, and Gary Putman, don't tell me about, runs into the store with a boombox. He goes, fucking Van Halen's playing on Michael Jackson's on. He plays at the solo. We're just sitting there. I'm like, damn, it was such a good solo. And he's like, and then it's kind of like he makes these equations. He goes like, Michael Jackson played with Paul McCartney, Eddie Van Halen played with Michael Jackson, Eddie's played with the Beatles. Yeah, that's solo. I didn't know he had that amp. So they rented the amp from him.
Yeah.
I would have said, unless you rent it, you could have it for free if I can come watch.
Right. Well, apparently, the thing was, there was a lot of different information popping around between Steve Lukather and different sources about where it was recorded, what amp it was. For a long time, everybody said Holdsworth's amp, but when Greg said that on my podcast, I was like pretty sure, and then I went on a Marshall forum and I dropped the video there. Somebody did, maybe not me, and Andy Brower, who rented it from Greg, confirmed it, said, this is what I did. It only took 30 minutes for Eddie to do this. And now we found out that Eddie was on break, but it was a break for the Diver Down tour. So all his gear was probably still trucked. Probably, I don't, you would figure by 82 he would have had a pretty good collection at home, but maybe not, maybe not his prime stuff. He didn't have 5150 yet. This is the thing that Lukather said was done at 5150. Well, 5150 was not together yet.
And I think that's the first place he moved out of his parents' house and got.
It is.
He moved right into that place because he was at his parents' house. I mean, up until when I saw him at that party, we heard the tracks from Women and Children First. He was still living at home.
Yeah, 80. That was 80. You said. I mean, you were saying it was after Women and Children First, so it was right around 80.
Well, no, that hadn't come out yet.
So 79.
We heard the tracks before the album came out.
Yeah, I have to figure out when the album came out, but it was recorded in 79.
Yeah, so it was around that time, but. So when did he move into 5150? When he got married?
81. He actually, the way I understand it, there was a house there originally that was Valerie Bertinelli's house, smaller house. And then he moved up there with her. And then they expanded of course, he had some kind of outbuilding, which became 5150. And then they rebuilt another house on that spot, which is the mansion that's there now. That's how the history of it I know.
Here's another name you might look up. He's on Facebook. His name's David Law.
Okay.
He worked at Music for Everyone and Music Mart, and so he knows a lot. And I think his band played at Eddie's reception.
Okay.
They call the Mike Franceschini, Mike Sato, Dave Law, and I forget who else. And they just play covers. But there's photos of them playing, and I think Dave had a junior, and I think Eddie's playing his junior, but he has a tux on.
Right. I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah, 81. So yeah, the wedding present. I just put the wedding present up yesterday on my Instagram. Is that Valerie Bertinelli bought him the Lamborghini Miura S that he had all his entire life, and it had their wedding date on the license plate.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and so as Eddie, I don't know when Eddie decided to do this exactly because I don't know how sick he knew he was or whatever, but he did sell it to a dealer in Miami, and the dealer has a YouTube channel. He's a young guy, fairly young, and he said that Eddie brought it to Miami himself and delivered it.
Hey, one last story that you get a kick out of.
Go ahead.
Before NAMM was where it's at years ago. I mean, in the late 70s, it was at the Disneyland Hotel.
Oh,
and then they had it at the downtown. Then they had it in Anaheim, and they had something happen one year, and then they had it downtown LA, and then they're back in Anaheim. But when they had it in the Disneyland Hotel, it was real small, like a guitar show almost. No big stages, no big celebrities, just tables, and just you walk through a corridor. It was very tiny. So I'm walking down. And there's this crazy surfer dude behind the bench, and he's got a guitar. He goes, "Check this out! Hey, look at this! Check it out!" And he's just whammying and stuff. And I took a card, and in handwriting, his pen, it said Floyd Rose. He was there trying to get people to look at this. This is the best. Look, it won't it won't go out of tune. And this is before the fine tuners, like the Brad Gillis one. And I'm like, look at this nut, but I looked at it, I'm like, that's probably a good idea. And then Ed got one not too long after that, but it wasn't on a guitar yet. He was trying to get people to even be interested in it, but that was crazy, very interesting. Now you look at him, he's just an older dude. It's funny.
Yeah. What's funny is what was it on that interview with Lynn Ellsworth? Of course, Lynn Ellsworth is the person not only behind Boogie Bodies, but he's the guy behind introducing Floyd Rose to Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, there you go.
And so what happened is when Floyd came to Lynn, he told Lynn, "I've got a tremolo that I can make. It will stay in tune, no doubt." And Lynn said, "If you've got that, you're going to be a millionaire." And sure enough, Floyd Rose was buying Ferraris not long after that.
Wow. And does he still own the rights to the whole company, or did he sell it to somebody?
I'm pretty sure he still owns it because I saw him at NAMM in 2020, right before the pandemic, and I met him and talked to him for a while. He was still out there hawking it, man. He was talking to me all about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like he drove out there and then flew home or something?
I don't know if he drove out there, had it transported, then drove in from the airport, but he was there when the car got there, and this guy wasn't there, but he hasn't told this story yet because I think he's going to, because the car's been restored now.
So he still has it.
Yeah, the company in Florida, this Curated TV, Curated is the name of the company. They flew it back to the Lamborghini factory and had it refurbished to brand new.
Wow.
And they're about to bring it back and show it at Monterey. And apparently they've done something to it to make it a tribute to Eddie Van Halen, which we have not. He hasn't unveiled yet.
I'm saying they probably painted it zebra, all the stripes like the guitars.
I doubt it, but it is red and black. We know that, but we don't know exactly what they've done to it to make it a tribute. But apparently, it's still gonna be marked as his car. And
why did he sell it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he had an Audi R8 towards the end of his life, and he was driving that a lot. So I don't know if he sold it for money or. I don't think he needed money. I think he just started getting rid of some things. Like he got rid of the Flying V. Flying V he sold.
The one used on Hoffer Teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a real arena.
Yeah, 58.
Online, they had all of Neil Peart's cars. He had like 6 or 7, all the same color, but like racing kind of cars. And they were all parked like in a semicircle, like on some cliff, and a nice photography. And they were all being auctioned off. And,
wow.
Yeah, it's sad, but
it is sad that's happening. That car, is the car that you hear in Panama, the revving of that engine.
Oh, really?
I just thought, after he passed, that like they're not going to do anything. They're just not going to do anything, and we're not going to do anything.
Oh, I mean, you're talking about a tribute show?
A tribute show, any kind of retrospective.
Doesn't seem like it.
History, any kind of documentary. There's too many. You know how that works. There's so many people in the cog, and any one of those guys says no, and doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's sad. You got to get everybody on board. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, it blows my mind that Roth wouldn't, I've heard from people through this that Roth has pro shot video of Van Halen live in their primes, the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And
footage than we've seen. There's got to be. I mean, yeah. I think the gatekeeper of that whole thing is going to be Alex, as far as the yay or nay. I mean, Dave's Dave, but I don't know how much power he has in the whole what goes on thing. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't know. I think this is really a vehicle for your gear acquisition syndrome that you have behind you. You're getting come on off stuff.
Yeah, you asked my wife about that. I can't get nothing, man. Right now I'm on hold. I'm trying to get that new Epiphone's got a new Explorer out that's a 58 tribute.
And they make a V too. Yeah. I saw. See? And I saw a picture in Vintage Guitar, but they didn't show the headstock. I'm like, oh no. So I went online and they're like $1,000-something, aren't they?
$1,200.
Well, but it had the right headstocks.
Yeah, and the Kluson style tuners, and it's got the right look. It's pretty cool.
You're a V guy?
I'm more an Explorer guy. I have a V. I have a Carina V. I have the remember the 83 V?
Yes.
The reissued.
Let me show you something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
John Gadesi made this for me in 2000.
Uh-oh. Nice.
Got his name right there on the old headstock.
Killer.
Carina, and I have the Explorer that matches it. Just one knob. Eddie Van Halen.
Oh yeah.
He made 2 of these. He was at ESP, and he made this one, and then he made one that says ESP on it for Kirk Hammett. But it's like got a white pickguard and it's more red. But he even did this guitar is just awesome.
Dude, you know what? The V I have, it's the only guitar my wife ever walked in the room and went, "What are you playing? What? That sounds amazing." Your wife doesn't walk in while you're recording and go, "That sounds amazing." That never happens.
How much longer before you're done? Right. That's right. Oh, you got to keep another 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go down the street for a minute.
Right, exactly. Crazy, man.
It's like the guys I play in different bands around here. Like, how come your wife never comes? I go, she's not going to come. She's so. no way she's going to come. I mean, it's going to take a buffet of some kind, a new purse, maybe some shoes.
Right.
A bribery.
I'm with you there, bro.
Can I do a couple promos?
Sure, hit it.
First of all,
Carl Jai is going to give you his stuff. Come on.
I'm promoting other people.
Oh, really? You're not? Well, tell about your record store.
This is Tarantula Ditch. This is Tracy G's album. You heard about this?
Yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
And it's got I'm playing on it. Greg Leon's playing on it. A bunch of the deal was. He's put a ton of records out. Tracy, he records them himself. He has his own studio, and this one he just called me one day. He goes, "I'm doing a record, and I want just all different guitar players on each song." So he sent me the raw tracks. I did my thing, and I sent him how I think it should be mixed with the stems, and then he just did it himself. But it's a cool listen. There's a lot of if you're into guitar, there's a lot of guitar in this.
Awesome.
All right. And then the guys from Dred Zeppelin, Joe Ramsey, Gary Putman, the Prime Movers have a new CD out. It's called Pieces. They're songs that were recorded a while ago. Most of them recorded A&M. And it's the Prime Movers, and then I was added to it. So this is right before Dred Zeppelin. This turned into Dred Zeppelin.
Okay.
The drummer, the bass player, and the guitar. And so this is fresh out. You can go to Birdcage. It's on Bandcamp, Birdcage, or Prime Movers. Okay. And then this is the last thing I did.
Awesome.
Repurpose. I got a nice guitar player magazine. This is a very, they're not songs, they're events. And each event, it's like you get in your car and turn the radio on, and then you turn it, and the songs just abruptly. So it's a series of medleys.
Okay.
You'd have to hear it. It's just, but my website got hacked, so you can only get it on eBay. It's on eBay, but it's cheap. But anyway, yeah. So that's that.
That's cool, man. It's
an instrumental, no singing. There's records that are sampled, and it's old cassettes turned into new songs. All kinds of. It's interesting. I'll send you a copy.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear that, and I'll send you a copy of mine.
Wait, tell me about your band. Actually, I saw a photo. Now you guys are doing kind of a. Were you wearing some stage props in the tool?
Yeah, that's another guy. Though. That's Eddie Shark. That's my alter ego.
Shark.
Eddie Shark.
And you're rock revival.
Retro rock revival, yeah.
Retro rock revival. That must be a fun gig.
Dude, well, I'm gonna have to get over there to your record shop and check it out. So, talk about that for just a second.
Okay. We actually had a standalone store, but now we're an antique mall because it's on the square, and any kind of businesses you want bigger like that are off the square, and people just don't. It's a little town. It's like a little Mayberry town. It's called Dahlonega, Georgia.
Yeah.
College up there. College in North Georgia is up there. It was a military college, but now it's kind of open to everybody. But it's just a small town. We're in antiques and collectibles, and I have two booths. My wife does vintage clothes and art and pottery and stuff like that, and I do records, CDs, stereo gear, sometimes a guitar, books, all about music. And yeah, it does. I'm not getting rich, but it does well. We moved here in 2008 from Pasadena. She's originally from Montgomery. She grew up in Raymer, Georgia, but she was from Montgomery and worked for the airlines here in Atlanta. And then she lived with me for like 3 years out there, and we just decided to move and found this place, and we just loved it. And got a house here, and then I have the basement set up to record and stuff in. And so one day she goes, "I'm going to get a booth at the mall," and she just took a little small, 8x8 stall, like $75 a month or something, and then started doing okay. And then one other guy had like a crate of records. I go, records. And Joe Ramsey, the guy from started the Marquee West and all that stuff, Dred Zeppelin, he was always a record guy. And later in life, he passed away in 2016, I think, 15. Mm-hmm. He had a record store in Monrovia, California called Resistor Records. So he fulfilled that dream. But we were always into records. We used to work at Liquor's Pizza's main warehouse in Glendale years ago. And we worked for Warehouse Records, which is a chain that was in LA around that in the 70s. And anyway, so I said, you know what? So I started hunting down records. This is like 12 years ago when it was still like you go to Goodwill and find good stuff, Mm-hmm. Now everybody's doing it. So I usually estate sales. People sell me collections from their personal thing. Like if you want to sell me a collection, there'll be a card in my folder, and then just hunting, and stuff. I don't really collect records myself, so it's all I don't touch my own stash, man. So it's all it's all up there. But yeah, the good stuff goes out quick. You get the Zeppelin, the Pink Floyd, the Grateful Dead. Those are the big three. But I just found these Van Halen albums. I put those up, and I saw them reasonable. We don't do a lot of online. I tried that, and people are psycho about there's a scratch on it. No, there isn't. Yeah, there isn't.
Right. So this is where they can put their hands on it and make their decision and leave.
Well, that's not shipping somebody something. It's like, you might get a different album back, and what are you going to do? Complain to eBay? It's a nightmare. So we do the record shows? There's an Atlanta record show that happens every couple months. We're going to take that. But it's fun, man. It's fun. And I discover a lot of music. So that's how I know a lot about bands and who is in bands, because I'll read the liner notes. If I see somebody produced a record, I'll say, well, Roy Thomas Baker produced this band I never heard of, the 5 Cent Shoes, who are they? And I'll buy their record if I get it cheap, and I learn about that band, or I'll Google it. Or YouTube has everything. Go on YouTube. Some guy put a video of that album up there, guaranteed. Bands you never heard of. But it's fun to do. But it takes time. I got to get back to do some more recording. And I play all the time. I play in the local bars up here. We play at the American Legion up here for the vets. We play at Irish Pub up here. There's a real serious rock club that has local traveling bands called Good Old Days coming. We play there. Then I'll play a Mexican restaurant too that has a bar in it. So, but that's all covers, classic rock.
Sure. That's what I do. I do the same thing you do. And I have a Wednesday night regular that I play every week. Been playing there for 9 years in a hotel, the Holiday Inn, and great turnover every week. New people from all over the freaking country. It's great to have that. You have that kind of constant change.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
It's funny, real quick, about Gary Putman, the guy I was telling you about. Yeah. He's been playing music so long that he was okay. Remember Cal Jam, the big Cal Jam that had ELP headlined? It was ELP. I went to it. I was 18. It was ELP, Deep Purple, with Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale. Burn came out. Yeah. It was Black Sabbath, Volume 4, Black Oak, Arkansas, Eagles' first tour, first album. Take It Easy just came out. Earth, Wind and Fire, Seals and Crofts. That was the bill. I learned that day I don't suntan well, but anyway, out in the hot. So there was across the freeway. This is an Ontario Motor Speedway. Across the freeway was a hotel, and all the bands stayed there, and they would helicopter them over when they were going to play. Gary was playing in the hotel at the bar. Oh, wow. He was in a Navy London group, and he was playing guitar. He goes, "Yeah, I saw everybody. They all come down to the bar. There's Glenn Hughes. There's Ozzy. Just all the bands stayed at the hotel and waited for their turn." And but I didn't really know Gary then. I mean, I knew him, but not like I do now. We didn't play together. He goes, "I was playing that at the bar. I could see the guys walking out to go to the helicopter." I went, "No shit." So that was like a Holiday Inn, type thing.
Yeah, the Cal Jam was one of those things, like the US Festival. It's like an iconic festival. Yeah.
And I saw you were talking about Yngwie. I saw Yngwie play with Steeler. They opened for Quiet Riot right when Mental Health was building up. They played at Perkins Palace, the place across from Pookie's I told you about. Mm-hmm. And my friend Rick Branley, who did the sound at the Wood Sound, Pookie's, where Motley Crue first played, they took him. So that live at 83, he's doing the sound. Yeah. Oh, Yngwie. So he was doing monitors that day. He goes, "I'm doing monitors. Come down to the Perkins Palace." So I walked in the back, and he had all these cabs and the 50-watt heads, but it said SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals. That's what you'd rent. If you came to town, you wanted a stack, you go to SIR. They had rehearsal studios, and they had anything you wanted to rent. This is before Brower. This is like, you could rent, PA cabinets, drums, anything. And it was down on Santa Monica Boulevard. And then he had 4 Strats, and he was just waiting. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, how's he stay in tune? And then I'm thinking then I watched and I go, well, he doesn't. Every song, he gave his guitar to a tech, took another one, played every song because he was just out of tune. He was just whammying so much. They were all just 70 Strats, and they weren't the white. He had the white one. There was like a olive colored one and a black one, and I don't know if they were rentals, but I'm like, oh, so you don't stay in tune. you just get a tech to hand you another guitar.
Yeah, but I think he actually didn't have but one guitar initially, and he probably did rent those if it was Steeler, yeah, because Rick Fox was in the band, the bass player, and I met him. I knew him later he used to come in VC Rich all the time. But they were, and Ron Keel was the singer, I think. Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Hey, it was good talking. And I'm glad you're doing this, and you're doing a good service to everybody. Get us old timers to remember before we start dying off or losing our memory, man. Really, it's true.
I know it's true.
Not gonna now. See, if I have Alzheimer's, I can play this for my great grandchildren.
And they will know, right? They will know your history, and that's an important thing, and that's the whole point. You know, is like you just said, we're not here forever.
No.
And these memories need to be captured, and the best way that I know how to capture it is to put it on YouTube and hope that YouTube lasts. Man, thank you so much for your time, dude. And
hey.
You know, you're right here. We're right across the state line from each other, so we can't. There's no damn excuse. I'll be out in LA too, so if you're going out there for NAMM or something, let me know.
Good for him, man. He built a better mousetrap. Absolutely,
he did. And so he
the humbucking pickup, the second greatest invention for the electric guitar. I think.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Wife out to eat. Okay, love you.
All right, hey, I'll talk to you. I'll stay in touch. We'll text back and forth, and if I'm over there anytime soon, I'll hit you up. We'll
I'll buy a beer or coffee or whatever you want.
Sounds good, man.
Okay.
Thanks, Carl.
Peace out.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.